what if a 10-year-old genius could outsmart one of the smartest men alive? The words hung in the air like a bolt of lightning, crackling with the possibility of something extraordinary. Aidan Stevens, a 10-year-old boy with an unmatched intellect, had just posed the most daring question of his young life. But this wasn't just any question, it was the beginning of a journey that would lead him to a confrontation with someone the world had long considered untouchable, Elon Musk. Aidan wasn't your average child. Born with an insatiable thirst for knowledge, he had spent the better part of his young life devouring books, solving complex equations, and tinkering with gadgets that most adults wouldn't even understand. To anyone who knew him, he was a prodigy, a brilliant mind trapped in a child's body. And yet, despite his extraordinary intelligence, there was always something missing in Aidan's life: connection. As his parents struggled to keep up with his brilliance, Aidan found himself isolated, often retreating into his thoughts and working on projects that no one could appreciate, until one day, his life changed forever. The world of technology, innovation, and space exploration had always fascinated Aidan, but there was one person in particular who captivated his imagination more than anyone else: Elon Musk. Aidan admired Musk not only for his success in companies like SpaceX and Tesla, but for his ability to challenge the boundaries of what was possible. To Aidan, Musk was more than just a businessman, he was a visionary, a force of nature whose ideas changed the world. But what if Aidan could challenge him? What if Aidan's genius could surpass even the great Elon Musk's? It was a rainy evening when Aidan's chance arrived. He was sitting in his room, hunched over a makeshift workbench cluttered with wires, circuit boards, and tools. The soft glow of his desk lamp illuminated his latest project, a self-repairing drone. It was his most ambitious creation yet, and he was determined to finish it by the end of the week. But that night, as Aidan tweaked the drone's flight system, something incredible happened. His mother knocked gently on the door. "Aidan," she called out. "There's someone on the phone for you." "It's Elon Musk." Aidan froze. The words didn't make sense at first. It was impossible. He had only ever dreamed of meeting Musk, of having a conversation with him. But here he was, being asked to speak to the man himself. His heart raced, and for a brief moment, he wondered if this was all a dream. He hurried to the phone, his hands trembling with excitement. "Hello," he said, his voice shaky. "Hi, Aidan," a deep voice responded. It was unmistakably Musk's. "I've been hearing some interesting things about you. People are saying you've got quite the mind for technology." Aidan's pulse quickened. This was real. Elon Musk was actually speaking to him. I don't know what to say," Aidan stammered, his mind racing. I'm just working on some projects." "Well, I've heard you've been doing a lot more than that. I'd like to meet you. Maybe we can talk shop," Musk continued, his tone casual but intrigued. Aidan was speechless. The man who had inspired so many of his own inventions, who had changed the way the world thought about technology, was inviting him for a conversation. It was the opportunity of a lifetime. But it also came with a challenge. "Are you ready for a challenge, Aidan?" Musk asked. "I'm curious to see if you can really back up all this talk about being a genius." And just like that, Aidan's world tilted. It was no longer just a dream, it was a test. A test that would not only challenge his intellect but his very identity as a child prodigy. "I'm ready," Aidan said, his voice steady despite the storm of emotions swirling inside him. "Great," Musk replied. "Let's see what you've got." The next few days felt like a whirlwind. Aidan could hardly focus on anything else as he prepared for the upcoming meeting. He spent hours perfecting his drone and working on new ideas. His mind raced with possibilities, wondering what kind of challenge Musk had in store for him. Was it a test of intelligence? Creativity? Problem solving? Whatever it was, Aidan was determined to prove himself. When the day finally arrived, Aidan stood before the mirror in his room, adjusting his glasses nervously. He had spent hours picking out the perfect outfit, something that would make him look both professional and approachable. After all, this was the moment that could change everything. His mother, still in disbelief about the whole situation, drove him to the venue, a sleek, modern building that housed one of Musk's private research labs. As they arrived, Aiden felt a mix of excitement and fear. This was it, the moment he had been waiting for. They were escorted into a large conference room, where Musk himself was already waiting. He stood up as they entered, his signature black t-shirt and jeans making him look effortlessly cool. He gave Aiden a smile, one that seemed genuine but also calculating, as if trying to gauge what kind of person he was dealing with. "Nice to meet you, Aiden," Musk said, shaking his hand. "I've heard a lot about you. I hope you're ready for this." Aiden nodded, trying to keep his composure. The room was filled with high-tech gadgets, monitors displaying complex data, and blueprints for future projects. Aiden's mind buzzed with excitement and curiosity. This was the kind of environment he had always dreamed of working in. Musk gestured for Aiden to sit down. "So, Aiden, what's your latest project? What are you working on?" For a moment, Aiden hesitated. He wasn't sure where to begin. Should he talk about his drone? His AI experiments? Or perhaps his plans to revolutionize space travel? Finally, he decided to start with the drone. "Well, I've been working on a self-repairing drone. It's designed to autonomously fix itself during flight if something goes wrong. I've been testing it, and so far, it's been pretty successful." Musk raised an eyebrow. "Impressive," he said, clearly intrigued. "But can it do this?" He pressed a button on a nearby console, and a holographic projection of a space station appeared in front of them. Aiden's eyes widened. "You want me to fix that?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Musk smiled. "Let's see what you can do." And just like that, the challenge had begun. Hit subscribe and leave a comment with where you're watching from. This story might just spark a new beginning. What's one thing that always pushes you forward, even when things get tough? Aiden Stevens was not your typical 10-year-old. While most children his age were preoccupied with school, friends, and games, Aiden had always been different. Even as a toddler, he seemed to possess an innate understanding of the world around him. By the time he was 5, he could recite the names of all the planets in the solar system and correctly solve puzzles that baffled most adults. At 6, he started asking questions that most people, including his parents, couldn't answer. Why were the stars so far away? How did electricity work? What made a plane fly? And most importantly, why were adults so afraid to explore the unknown? His parents, Linda and Mark Stevens, had always supported Aiden's insatiable curiosity, but they were also deeply concerned. They could see that their son was no ordinary child, he was a genius. But they also knew the world wasn't kind to children who stood out in such an extraordinary way. Aiden's mother, Linda, had always been his biggest cheerleader. She was a soft-spoken, kind woman who saw the world through a lens of empathy and understanding. She was constantly worried about Aiden's social development, however. No matter how many birthday parties she signed him up for or how many playdates she arranged, Aiden never seemed to connect with the other children. His mind was always elsewhere, lost in thought as he tried to solve the mysteries of the universe. He would occasionally make friends, but those relationships never lasted long. His peers simply couldn't keep up with him, and Aiden was rarely interested in topics that excited other kids. Aiden's father, Mark, was a brilliant scientist, but he had a much more pragmatic approach to life. He admired his son's intelligence, of course, but he was also deeply concerned about the social implications of raising a genius. Mark's concern stemmed from his own experiences. As a young man, he had been a promising scientist himself, but he had watched as his own brilliance alienated him from others. Mark didn't want Aiden to end up the same way. He wanted his son to live a balanced life, to be happy, and to feel connected to the world. But how could you convince a child genius to live in a world that didn't always make sense to him? Despite their best efforts, Aiden's parents found themselves walking a fine line between supporting their son's intellectual pursuits and ensuring that he didn't lose touch with the world around him. They encouraged him to pursue his passions, but they also made sure to remind him of the importance of relationships, friendships, and emotional intelligence. It wasn't easy. Aiden would often retreat into his thoughts, and the more he did, the more distant he became from his parents. Linda and Mark's worries were justified when Aiden reached the age of 8. That was when the first major conflict arose in the Stevens household. Aiden had begun developing complex algorithms for artificial intelligence, something his parents had no hope of understanding. When they found out that Aiden had taught himself how to write basic code, they were both proud and terrified. They understood that their son's potential was limitless, but they also feared that his extraordinary intellect might leave him isolated, a genius without a sense of community or purpose. That was when they made the decision to move from their quiet suburban home in Connecticut to a larger city in California. They believed that a change in environment, exposure to different people and ideas, and the opportunity to attend more specialized schools would help Aiden develop not only his intellect but also his emotional intelligence. When they arrived in California, Aiden found himself enrolled in a special program for gifted children. The program was supposed to give him the support and guidance he needed to flourish, but the truth was that Aiden never quite fit in. The other kids in the program were brilliant, no doubt, but they didn't think like Aiden. They struggled with concepts that Aiden had mastered years ago. While they excelled at traditional academics, Aiden found his mind constantly wandering to questions about space, time, and the future of humanity. At school, Aiden sat alone at lunch. He would spend hours in the library, reading books about physics, robotics, and engineering. He was the youngest in his class by far, but that didn't bother him. What bothered him was that no one seemed to understand the way he thought. Every day, he would return home to his parents, who would ask him about his day. And every day, Aiden would give the same response: it was fine. His parents could see the sadness in his eyes, but they didn't know how to reach him. As Aiden grew older, he became more withdrawn, more focused on his work. He began to build things, robots, drones, gadgets that no one else his age could comprehend. His room became a laboratory, with parts scattered everywhere, and his mind raced as he tinkered with ideas no one else could even imagine. He knew that he was different, but it wasn't until he stumbled upon a video of Elon Musk speaking about his vision for the future of space exploration that Aiden realized just how much more he could achieve. Elon Musk became a beacon of hope for Aiden. Musk's boldness, his willingness to defy the conventional and push the boundaries of technology, was exactly what Aiden longed for. Musk wasn't just a businessman, he was a man who believed that anything was possible, no matter how impossible it seemed. For the first time in his life, Aiden found someone who thought as he did, a dreamer, a visionary who didn't just want to change the world, but to reshape it entirely. Aiden started watching every interview, reading every article about Musk, and devouring books on space travel, electric cars, and artificial intelligence. He began to see Musk as a kindred spirit, someone who wasn't afraid to dream big, even if the rest of the world didn't understand him. Aiden knew that if there was anyone who could see his potential, it was Musk. And with that thought, a new idea took root in his mind, a plan to meet Musk, to show him that there was a new prodigy in town, a genius who could one day stand shoulder to shoulder with the greatest minds of the century. It wasn't long before Aiden started working on his most ambitious project yet, an autonomous drone that could repair itself mid-flight. He spent countless hours designing the algorithms, testing the hardware, and debugging the software. He knew that this was the project that could catch Musk's attention. If he could pull it off, it would be his ticket into the world he had always dreamed of, a world where he could change the course of history. But even Aiden, with all his brilliance, didn't know that the road ahead would lead to a confrontation with Musk himself, a confrontation that would change both of their lives forever. The first time Aiden laid eyes on Elon Musk, he was struck by how ordinary he looked. Despite the legend that surrounded him, Musk was just a man, standing there in his black t-shirt, jeans, and sneakers. He didn't look like the kind of person who could change the world. He looked like someone you could run into at the coffee shop, perhaps even someone who might ask you to pass the sugar. But Aidan knew better. Behind that calm demeanor was a mind capable of reshaping the future, a mind that Aidan wanted to challenge. The meeting had been set. It wasn't the face-to-face confrontation that Aidan had initially imagined, but it was enough to ignite the spark of ambition inside him. The event was a conference on emerging technologies, and Aidan had somehow secured an invite. As he walked into the vast conference hall, the hum of anticipation filled the air. Hundreds of tech enthusiasts, scientists, and innovators had gathered to hear Musk speak about the future of artificial intelligence and space exploration. Aidan, however, was only focused on one thing: Musk. With each step he took, Aidan's thoughts raced. This wasn't just any conference. This was the opportunity to show the world, and Musk himself, that Aidan Stevens wasn't just a child prodigy. He was a force to be reckoned with. The moment Musk walked onto the stage, the crowd erupted in applause. The lights dimmed, and Musk began to speak about the future of technology, the importance of space exploration, and how humanity needed to push beyond the boundaries of what was possible. Aidan listened intently, his mind racing with ideas as he absorbed every word. But as Musk spoke, Aidan's thoughts began to shift. He wasn't just listening to Musk. He was analyzing him, studying his speech patterns, his mannerisms, his approach to problem solving. And then, in a moment of clarity, Aidan had a realization: Musk's ideas were brilliant, yes, but they were also limited by one fundamental thing. They were based on existing technology, existing knowledge. Musk had pushed the boundaries, but he had yet to cross them completely. That was where Aidan's genius lay. He didn't think inside the box, or even outside the box. He thought beyond the box altogether. As the presentation came to a close, Musk opened the floor for questions. This was Aidan's moment. He raised his hand, and the spotlight shifted to him. The entire room seemed to hold its breath as Aidan stood up. His heart raced, but his mind was calm. This was his chance to make a statement. "Mr. Musk," Aidan began, his voice steady. "You talk about reaching Mars, about creating a sustainable future for humanity. But what if the true breakthrough doesn't lie in building bigger rockets or electric cars? What if the real future lies in artificial intelligence, AI that can think, create, and evolve on its own?" The room fell silent. Aidan's words hung in the air like a challenge, daring Musk to respond. Musk looked at the young boy, his face unreadable. For a moment, it felt like time had stopped. Then, Musk smiled, a knowing smile that was both intrigued and bemused. "Interesting," Musk said, nodding. "You're suggesting we should focus on AI instead of space exploration?" His tone was light, but there was an edge of curiosity beneath it. "I'm suggesting that AI could be the key to everything," Aidan replied, his voice unwavering. "Space exploration, sustainability, everything we need to solve the world's problems could be powered by AI. But not the kind of AI we have today. I'm talking about something more advanced. A true self-evolving intelligence that can work alongside humanity, not just as a tool, but as a partner." Musk leaned back, clearly intrigued, but there was a glint in his eyes that suggested he wasn't ready to concede just yet. "That's a bold statement for someone your age. Tell me, what makes you think you're the one to make this kind of breakthrough?" Aidan's mind raced. He had no formal education, no degree, no team of scientists working with him. All he had was his own brilliant mind, a deep well of ideas, and an insatiable desire to push the limits of what was possible. But that was enough. "I've been working on a project," Aidan said, his voice calm but full of conviction. "A self-repairing drone. It's not just a machine, it's a step towards something greater. A system that can learn, adapt, and improve itself. It's not just about building a machine that can fly. It's about creating an intelligence that can think for itself, make decisions, and solve problems in real time. Imagine if we had a network of these drones, constantly learning, evolving, and working together to solve the world's most complex challenges." Musk's eyes narrowed. He was clearly impressed, but there was a flicker of skepticism in his expression. Self-repairing drones? That's certainly impressive for someone your age, but do you really think you can take AI to that level? Can you truly build something that evolves on its own, without any human intervention? Aiden's response was simple but powerful: yes, I can. And I will. There was a pause. The room remained silent, the weight of Aiden's words hanging in the air. Musk studied the boy for a long moment before he finally spoke. You're confident. I'll give you that. But confidence alone doesn't change the world. You need more than just a great idea. You need the right tools, the right resources, and the right people. Are you ready for that? Aiden didn't hesitate. I'm ready. The tension in the room was palpable as Musk held Aiden's gaze. For a moment, it seemed like the world was waiting for Musk's response. Finally, he nodded slowly. All right, Musk said, his voice cool but edged with a sense of respect. Let's see if you can back up your words. If you can, maybe you'll be the one to change the game. The room erupted in applause, but for Aiden, it wasn't about the applause. It was about the challenge. Musk had just given him an invitation, a challenge to prove himself, to show that his ideas were more than just words. But little did Aiden know, this encounter was only the beginning. The road ahead would not be easy. Musk's words had lit a fire inside him, but that fire would soon lead Aiden down a path filled with obstacles, challenges, and unexpected twists that would test every ounce of his intellect, his resolve, and his character. After his moment with Elon Musk, Aiden's life took a dramatic turn. He was no longer just a kid with big dreams, he was now a contender in a world he had long admired from the sidelines. Musk's challenge had sparked something inside him. No longer satisfied with just theories and ideas, Aiden was determined to prove himself. But proving himself would be far from easy. Aiden spent the next few weeks working non-stop on his drone project. He had already developed the basic design for a self-repairing drone, but Musk's words echoed in his mind: you need more than just a great idea. Aiden knew that to truly push the boundaries, he needed to go beyond his initial concept. The drone needed to be more than a machine that could repair itself. It needed to be something that could evolve, adapt, and make autonomous decisions. It had to learn from its environment and continuously improve without human input. The challenge was immense, but Aiden's mind thrived in adversity. He threw himself into the project, spending sleepless nights in his lab, surrounded by wires, circuit boards, and coding books. Each time he thought he had solved one problem, another one would arise, demanding his attention. The algorithms he had written initially were good, but they weren't perfect. The drone could repair itself in simple ways, but Aiden wanted it to be able to analyze complex damage and adapt accordingly. His parents, while supportive, began to grow concerned. Linda noticed the toll the project was taking on Aiden. His once vibrant eyes were now bloodshot from lack of sleep, and his focus was so intense that he hardly spoke to anyone outside of his work. Mark, ever the pragmatist, tried to intervene. Aiden, you need to take a break, Mark said one evening, his voice full of concern. You've been working non-stop for weeks. You're burning out. You can't keep going like this. Aiden didn't look up from his computer. I'm fine, Dad. I just need to get this right. Linda sat down beside him, gently placing her hand on his shoulder. We know you're capable of amazing things, sweetie. But you can't do it all alone. You need to take care of yourself, too. Aiden's mind was elsewhere, fixated on the task at hand. But as his mother's words sank in, a sense of guilt began to creep in. He knew they were right. He couldn't keep sacrificing his health for the project. But at the same time, he couldn't help but feel that this was his one shot at greatness. If he could perfect this drone, he would prove not only to Musk but to the world that he was more than just a child prodigy, he was a force to be reckoned with. One afternoon, after hours of trial and error, Aiden finally had a breakthrough. The drone's self-repairing algorithm had evolved. It could now assess damage and determine the best course of action to fix itself, even in unexpected scenarios. Aiden couldn't contain his excitement as he ran outside to test it. The drone took off, hovering effortlessly in the air, and then, a malfunction. It spiraled down, crashing to the ground with a loud thud. But this time, something different happened. Instead of just sitting idle, the drone's sensors activated, and it began to repair itself, adjusting its broken parts and recalibrating its flight path. Aiden's heart raced. He had done it. The drone wasn't just repairing itself, it was learning from its mistakes, adapting in real time. It was everything he had envisioned and more. But as he celebrated the small victory, he knew that it wasn't enough. This was just the beginning. The real test would be when he presented it to Musk. And that meant taking the next step, showing the world that this technology could revolutionize industries far beyond drones. Aiden began refining the drone, adding new features that would allow it to integrate with AI systems and work autonomously in a variety of environments. His dream was becoming clearer. This wasn't just about a single drone or a single invention, it was about creating a network of interconnected machines, all capable of learning and evolving. Together, they could solve the world's most pressing problems, from disaster relief to environmental conservation, even space exploration. The stakes were higher than ever. Aiden wasn't just competing against Musk's ideas, he was competing against the future itself. The pressure to succeed weighed heavily on him. Every failure, every setback felt like a personal defeat. And yet, with each failure, Aiden learned more. He grew stronger, more resilient, and more determined. The journey was hard, but he knew it was the only way to reach his ultimate goal. It wasn't long before Aiden began to attract attention. Word spread about the young genius who was challenging Elon Musk's vision of the future. He started receiving offers from investors, tech companies, and universities eager to back his work. But Aiden wasn't interested in any of them, not yet, anyway. He wasn't ready to share his ideas with the world. He needed to perfect the technology first, and then he would take it to Musk. He knew that once he showed Musk what he had created, everything would change. But there was a new problem now. Aiden wasn't working alone anymore. He had started to form a small team, a group of brilliant young engineers and programmers who believed in his vision. And while they were all incredibly talented, they were also starting to push for their own ideas, their own agendas. The unity that had once defined Aiden's work was beginning to fracture. As the team's ideas grew more diverse, so did their ambitions. And that created friction. Aiden had always been used to working alone, but now he had to navigate the complexities of teamwork. His genius had always been a solitary pursuit, but now he was forced to confront the reality of collaboration. And it wasn't easy. Some of his team members began to question his methods, pushing for shortcuts and compromises that Aiden wasn't willing to make. The tension grew as deadlines approached and expectations skyrocketed. But Aiden refused to compromise. His vision was too important. If he wanted to change the world, he had to stay true to his principles. He couldn't let anyone, not even his closest allies, sway him from the path he had set. The journey ahead was fraught with challenges, technical, personal, and professional. But Aiden knew that this was the road he had to walk. The stakes had never been higher, and the pressure had never been greater. But he was determined to see it through. He had a dream, and nothing was going to stop him from realizing it. And then, one day, Aiden received a message from Musk's team. It was time. The confrontation he had been waiting for was finally here. The message from Musk's team arrived late one evening, a single line of text that changed everything: "We're ready to see what you've got. Meet us in Silicon Valley." Aiden stared at his phone, the glow of the screen illuminating his face in the darkened room. The air around him seemed to freeze, the weight of the message sinking into his bones. It was happening. The day he had worked for, the day he had dreamed of, was finally here. The moment he would stand face to face with Elon Musk and present his creation. But as the excitement swirled inside him, a sinking feeling settled in his stomach. He wasn't ready. Not fully. Yes, the drones were operational, capable of repairing themselves and adapting. But Aiden knew deep down that there were still imperfections, flaws he hadn't yet solved, bugs in the system that could render the whole thing a failure. What if Musk didn't see the potential? What if he dismissed it as just another child's fancy, too idealistic and unrefined to work in the real world? Aiden had always been confident, almost to the point of arrogance, but now the weight of self-doubt crept in. The young genius who had once dreamed of overthrowing Musk's legacy now found himself questioning his abilities. Was he truly ready for this? Could he really change the world? The night before the meeting, Aiden couldn't sleep. His thoughts raced, replaying every failure, every setback in vivid detail. The drone that had malfunctioned, the countless hours spent rewriting code, the arguments with his team. Each mistake seemed amplified in his mind, a constant reminder of his limitations. But then, in the midst of his spiraling thoughts, something clicked. He thought about the journey, about everything he had overcome to get to this point. He remembered the feeling of holding the first prototype in his hands, how it had sparked something inside him, a vision of a future where machines and humans worked together, not in competition, but in harmony. He remembered how he had fought for this vision, even when no one believed in him. Aiden's thoughts shifted to his parents. Linda and Mark had always been there, supporting him even when the world didn't understand. They believed in him when he didn't believe in himself. Their love and faith in him had been the foundation upon which he had built everything. Suddenly, the weight of fear seemed to lessen. This wasn't just about proving something to Musk or to the world. It was about proving something to himself. He didn't need to be perfect. He just needed to be true to his vision. As dawn broke, Aiden packed his bags and prepared for the journey to Silicon Valley. He felt a renewed sense of purpose, but the nerves were still there. This wasn't going to be easy. He had one shot at this, one opportunity to show Musk that his vision was worth the risk. It was time to face the challenge head-on. The meeting with Musk was scheduled for the next morning at SpaceX's headquarters. As Aiden arrived, his heart raced with anticipation. The sprawling complex was like nothing he had ever seen before, high-tech, sleek, and imposing. Inside, the team led him through a labyrinth of glass walls, neon lights, and futuristic equipment. And then, there he was, Elon Musk, standing in front of a massive screen displaying a galaxy of interconnected systems and satellites. Musk turned to Aiden, his expression unreadable. "Welcome, Aiden. I've heard a lot about you," Musk said, his voice calm, yet authoritative. "Let's see what you've got." Aiden took a deep breath and walked forward, his mind sharp and focused. He activated the drone, and it hummed to life, hovering gently in the air. Aiden explained the technology behind it, highlighting the self-repairing mechanism, the ability to adapt and evolve based on environmental factors, and how it could be integrated into a larger network to solve complex problems. Musk listened intently, his eyes narrowing as he observed the drone's movements. The room fell silent as the drone performed a series of maneuvers, repairing itself after sustaining minor damage and adapting its trajectory to avoid obstacles. Aiden felt a flicker of pride. This was his creation, his vision brought to life. But then, without warning, Musk asked a question that sent a chill through Aiden's spine. What happens when the drone encounters a situation it can't solve? What if it fails, Aiden? Aiden hesitated, his mind racing. The question hit him harder than he had anticipated. Up until this point, he had been so focused on the possibilities, the excitement of success, that he hadn't considered the limitations of his creation. What if his drones couldn't handle every scenario? What if, in their quest for self-improvement, they made mistakes, fatal ones? I haven't fully explored that yet, Aiden admitted, his voice faltering. But I believe that's where the potential lies. The system could learn from those failures, adapt even further, and ultimately overcome them. Musk raised an eyebrow, clearly unconvinced. That's a lot of what-ifs, Aiden. In the real world, things are messy. Failures are catastrophic. You can't just hope that your system will learn from its mistakes. You need to account for those mistakes from the very beginning. Aiden's chest tightened. It felt like a punch to the gut. Musk wasn't just critiquing his work, he was challenging his entire vision. Aiden's mind raced, but this time, he didn't retreat. This was the moment he had been waiting for. The emotional climax, the ultimate test of his resolve. No, Aiden said, his voice steady, I don't just hope it will learn. I believe it will learn. It will adapt, grow, and find solutions that we haven't even thought of yet. But it needs time, and it needs support. The potential is there. I know it is. Musk stared at him, his expression unreadable. For what felt like an eternity, the room remained silent. And then, finally, Musk spoke. You're right about one thing, he said slowly. The potential is there. But there's a long way to go before this technology is ready for the real world. Aiden's heart sank. Had he failed? Was his vision not enough? But Musk wasn't done. However, I respect your determination. You've got something here, Aiden. It's raw, it's unpolished, but there's something extraordinary in the way you're thinking. So here's my offer, let's work together. I'll help you refine this, if you're willing to put in the time and effort to get it right. Aiden stood there, stunned. Musk was offering him a partnership, an opportunity to take his idea to the next level. It was everything he had dreamed of, everything he had fought for. But as he looked around at the team, at the towering expectations, he realized something. This wasn't just about his drones or even his own success. This was about shaping the future, together. Aiden nodded, his voice full of conviction. I'm in. Let's make this happen. The weeks following the meeting with Elon Musk were some of the most intense of Aiden's life. The agreement to collaborate had opened doors to resources, expertise, and opportunities beyond anything he could have imagined. Musk had put together a team of engineers, AI specialists, and designers to help Aiden refine his drone technology. But the pressure to deliver was immense. Every day brought new challenges, and Aiden often found himself questioning if he had what it took to meet those expectations. But despite the weight of it all, something shifted within Aiden. No longer burdened by the need to prove himself to the world, he began to see the collaboration with Musk as a chance to evolve, not just as an inventor, but as a person. For the first time, he wasn't alone in his journey. He had the support of brilliant minds who shared his vision, and together, they were working towards something much bigger than a single invention. The team worked tirelessly, often late into the night, refining the drone's algorithms and improving its ability to adapt and learn. Aiden's idea of a self-repairing drone that could evolve into a network of autonomous machines was starting to take shape. Every breakthrough was a step closer to his dream, and every setback was a lesson learned. He had to remind himself that perfection wasn't the goal, progress was. The most significant change came in his mindset. Aiden began to embrace the idea that failure wasn't the end, it was a part of the process. Every error, every glitch in the system, was an opportunity to grow. The fear that had once haunted him, the fear of failure in front of Musk, began to dissipate. Instead, he learned to view each obstacle as an essential part of the journey toward success. One evening, after a long day of testing the latest version of the drone, Aiden sat down with Musk to discuss the progress they had made. It was one of those rare moments when the lab was quiet, the team was resting, and the world outside seemed to stand still. Aiden, Musk said, his usual calm demeanor softening. I've been watching you work. And I've seen how much you've grown. When we first met, I didn't think you had what it takes. But now, I'm seeing a new side of you, a side that knows how to deal with failure, that knows how to push forward when things get tough. You're not just a kid anymore. You're an inventor, a creator. And that's something I respect. Aiden looked up at Musk, surprised by the sincerity in his voice. For so long, he had idolized Musk, and now, here he was, being acknowledged not as a prodigy or a novelty, but as a peer, a fellow innovator. I couldn't have done it without you, Aiden said, his voice steady. You challenged me when I needed it, and you showed me that failure doesn't mean the end. It just means I have to try harder. Musk smiled slightly. That's the key. Never stop learning. Never stop trying. And remember, the greatest innovations come not from what we get right, but from what we get wrong. Aiden nodded, understanding the weight of those words. He had spent so much of his life chasing perfection, but now he saw the truth. Innovation wasn't about having all the answers, it was about asking the right questions and being willing to fail until you find the solution. As the months passed, Aiden's drone technology continued to evolve. The self-repairing drone was no longer just a concept, it was a viable, functioning system capable of transforming industries. Aiden's small team had grown into a full-scale operation, with support from Musk's companies and investors eager to back the project. The drone had become more than just a machine, it had become a symbol of what was possible when passion, innovation, and collaboration came together. And yet, as Aiden stood on the brink of something truly groundbreaking, he couldn't help but think back to where it all started. A lonely, confused kid sitting in his room, drawing designs on scraps of paper, dreaming of a future no one believed in. He had come so far, but in many ways, it felt like he was just getting started. Aiden turned to his parents one evening, his heart full of gratitude. I couldn't have done any of this without you, he said, his voice choked with emotion. You always believed in me, even when I didn't believe in myself. Thank you for everything. Linda smiled, tears welling in her eyes. You've always had it in you, Aiden. We're just proud to have been a part of your journey. Mark nodded, his voice thick with pride. We always knew you were destined for something great. As the final tests for the drone approached, Aiden found himself reflecting on everything he had learned along the way. He had learned the value of persistence, of embracing failure as a stepping stone to success. He had learned that genius wasn't about being perfect, it was about being willing to push the boundaries of what was possible, even when the world told you it couldn't be done. And now, as the world began to take notice of his work, Aiden knew one thing for certain, he had already won. Not because of the drone or the accolades that would soon follow, but because of the person he had become. He was no longer just the 10-year-old genius who had outshone Elon Musk. He was Aiden Carter, an innovator, a creator, and someone who knew that the journey never truly ends. As he prepared for the final presentation, Aiden glanced at the drone one last time. It was more than just a machine now, it was a reflection of everything he had gone through, every lesson learned, every failure embraced. And with that, he knew he was ready for whatever came next. The world was waiting, but Aiden had already found his place in it. The day of the final presentation arrived, and Aiden found himself standing in front of a massive audience at the world-renowned tech conference in Silicon Valley. The air was thick with anticipation, and Aiden could feel the weight of every eye in the room as they waited for the next groundbreaking innovation to be revealed. This wasn't just any crowd, these were industry giants, investors, and media moguls, all eager to see what the young genius had in store. Aiden's heart raced, but this time, it wasn't out of fear. It was excitement, the thrill of knowing he had something extraordinary to present. He had spent months working on this moment, and now, it was finally here. As he walked onto the stage, the bright lights felt almost blinding, but Aiden squared his shoulders and took a deep breath. This was his moment. Elon Musk was seated front and center, his ever-watchful eyes locked onto Aiden. His presence only fueled Aiden's determination. This was the man who had doubted him at first, but who had also given him the opportunity to prove himself. And now, Aiden was ready to show him, and the world, what he had accomplished. The audience grew silent as Aiden set the drone down on a pedestal in front of him. The sleek, futuristic design gleamed under the stage lights. He could feel the tension in the room, as if everyone was holding their breath, waiting for something incredible to happen. Aiden's hands were steady as he activated the drone, and it immediately came to life, hovering above the pedestal with a smooth, silent motion. Ladies and gentlemen, Aiden began, his voice steady and confident, today, I'm here to present not just a new invention, but a vision for the future, a vision where technology can adapt, evolve, and work alongside us to solve the world's most pressing challenges. The drone glided effortlessly through the air, its movements precise and calculated. Aiden demonstrated its ability to self-repair when damaged, the intricate algorithms allowing it to identify issues and correct them in real time. He showed the audience how the drone could navigate through complex environments, avoid obstacles, and communicate with other drones in a network. But it wasn't just the technical aspects that captivated the audience, it was the potential. Aiden painted a picture of a world where these drones could be deployed to assist in disaster zones, where they could help rebuild infrastructure, or where they could deliver critical supplies to remote areas. The possibilities were endless, and with every demonstration, the audience grew more and more enthralled. But Aiden's presentation wasn't just about showcasing the technology, it was about the message behind it. He spoke passionately about the need for innovation that could make the world a better place, not just for profit, but for the greater good. He spoke about his vision of a world where machines and humans worked in harmony, each complementing the other, solving problems that seemed insurmountable. This isn't just about creating something new, Aiden said, his voice full of conviction. It's about creating something that will change the way we live, work, and interact with the world around us. It's about building a future that's not just driven by technology, but by humanity. This is just the beginning. As the drone completed its final demonstration, Aiden stepped back, his chest swelling with pride. The room erupted into applause. The crowd was on their feet, cheering, clapping, and whistling in awe. Aiden's heart pounded in his chest, but it wasn't just the applause that fueled him, it was the realization that he had done it. He had created something that people believed in, something that had the potential to change everything. Aiden looked over at Musk, who was standing with a look of approval on his face. Musk didn't speak immediately, but his nod of approval said everything. He had seen the potential in Aiden all along, and now, he was seeing it realized. The applause finally subsided, and Aiden took a deep breath, looking out at the crowd. He knew this was only the beginning. There would be more tests, more challenges, and more hurdles to overcome. But for the first time, Aiden felt ready. He had the confidence in himself, and he had the support of the people around him, people who believed in his vision. Musk stood up, walking toward the stage with a purposeful stride. He extended his hand to Aiden, and the room fell silent once again. Aiden, Musk said, his voice steady and measured, you've done something incredible here. I've seen the evolution of this project from the very beginning, and I have to say, this is just the start. You've not only proven yourself, you've proven that the future is in good hands. I'm excited to see where this technology goes, and I want to continue working with you to make it a reality. Aiden's heart skipped a beat. Musk wasn't just acknowledging his work, he was offering to help take it further. This was the partnership that Aiden had dreamed of, the one that would turn his vision into something that could change the world. Thank you, Elon, Aiden said, shaking Musk's hand firmly. I couldn't have done this without you and your team. This is just the beginning. As the event came to a close, Aiden felt a sense of accomplishment wash over him. He had proven his worth, not just to Musk, but to the world. But more importantly, he had proven something to himself. He had proven that no dream was too big, no challenge too great. If you had the determination, the vision, and the support of those who believed in you, anything was possible. Aiden's journey was far from over. There would be obstacles ahead, setbacks to face, and obstacles to overcome. But now, he understood that failure wasn't the end, it was simply a part of the journey. The true victory lay in pushing forward, in learning from mistakes, and in always believing in the power of innovation to create a better world. And as he stood there, surrounded by applause, Aiden knew that the future was wide open. He wasn't just a 10-year-old genius anymore, he was a creator, a visionary, and a force to be reckoned with. The world had just begun to realize what Aiden Carter was capable of. The excitement of the presentation was still fresh in Aiden's mind as he walked off the stage, the applause echoing in his ears. He had done it, he had taken the world by storm. But the moment of triumph quickly gave way to the reality of what came next. While the world celebrated his success, Aiden knew that this was just the beginning. The true test was yet to come. In the weeks that followed, the floodgates opened. Investors lined up, eager to get a piece of Aiden's groundbreaking technology. Media outlets scrambled to interview him, and tech companies sought to partner with him to bring his drones to market. It was everything he had dreamed of, but also everything he had feared. The pressure to deliver was more intense than ever. Aiden found himself at the center of a whirlwind of meetings, presentations, and late-night discussions. The excitement of working with Musk and the team was palpable, but the workload was overwhelming. He had to constantly push the limits of his technology, refining the drone's capabilities, and making sure it could handle the immense expectations being placed on it. Musk, ever the visionary, was pushing for more. He saw the potential in Aiden's drones to revolutionize entire industries, from agriculture to disaster relief, and even space exploration. "The world is watching you, Aiden," Musk would say. "We can't afford to fail now." Aiden appreciated the support, but the constant demands were starting to take a toll. He hadn't realized how much pressure he had been under until the late-night coding sessions started to feel more like a chore than a passion. The joy of invention that had once fueled him now felt like a distant memory. The weight of responsibility hung over him like a cloud, and the thrill of creating was slowly being replaced by the fear of failure. One night, after another long day in the lab, Aiden sat alone in his office. The glow of his computer screen was the only light in the room. He ran his hands through his hair, staring at the code on the screen. Nothing seemed to be working. The drone's self-repair system had a glitch, and he couldn't figure out how to fix it. Frustration built up inside him, and for the first time in months, Aiden questioned everything he had worked for. "Maybe I'm not cut out for this," he muttered to himself, his voice barely a whisper. "What if I can't live up to the expectations? What if I'm just a kid playing in a world that's too big for me?" The words hung in the air, a stark contrast to the confident young inventor he had become. Aiden had always prided himself on his resilience, his ability to push through even the toughest challenges. But now, as the pressure mounted, it felt like everything was slipping through his fingers. Just then, his phone buzzed. It was a message from his mom. "Hey, buddy. How's everything going? We're so proud of you. Remember, no matter what happens, you've already accomplished so much. We love you." Aiden stared at the message, feeling a lump form in his throat. His parents had always been there for him, supporting him when no one else did. They had believed in him when he was just a kid with a crazy idea. And now, as he stood at the precipice of something bigger than he could have ever imagined, they were still there, reminding him that success wasn't measured by perfection. With a deep breath, Aiden wiped his eyes and closed his laptop. He needed a break. A few moments to clear his mind. He walked out of the lab and into the cool night air, letting the quiet calm him. The stars above seemed to offer a sense of reassurance, reminding him that the journey was long, and that he didn't have to have all the answers right now. The next morning, Aiden took a different approach. He spent the day revisiting the original concept of his drone, the one that had sparked everything. Instead of focusing on the endless upgrades and refinements, he returned to the heart of what made the technology unique, its potential to help people, to solve real-world problems. He remembered why he had started this project in the first place, not to prove something to others, but to make a difference. With renewed focus, Aiden returned to the code and started from scratch. It wasn't about perfection anymore, it was about progress. And with each line of code, he began to feel the spark of creativity return. He was no longer just building a machine, he was building a legacy, something that could leave a lasting impact on the world. The next few months were a blur of constant work, but the difference was clear. Aiden was no longer drowning in the weight of his responsibilities. Instead, he was energized by the potential of his work. The glitches and setbacks were still there, but they no longer felt like insurmountable obstacles. Aiden had learned to embrace the journey, imperfections and all. One day, as Aiden sat with the team, going over the final version of the drone, Musk leaned back in his chair and looked at him with a smile. "Aiden," Musk said, "this is it. You've done it. You've created something that can change the world." Aiden smiled back, but this time, he wasn't just looking at the technology, he was looking at everything he had learned along the way. The journey hadn't been easy, but it had shaped him into someone who was ready for whatever came next. The pressure, the doubts, the fear, they were all part of the process. And now, Aiden understood that failure wasn't a sign of weakness, it was a part of growth, a necessary step toward success. As the drones were finally ready for launch, Aiden felt a sense of calm wash over him. He was no longer the young genius trying to prove himself, he was a creator who had learned to embrace both the triumphs and the failures. And with that, Aiden Carter was ready to change the world. Aiden's work had begun to attract worldwide attention, and with it came the inevitable surge of competition. At first, the young prodigy reveled in the recognition, enjoying the validation of his efforts. But as his drone technology began to gain traction in various industries, a new, unexpected threat emerged. It wasn't the established tech giants like Google or Amazon who posed the greatest challenge to Aiden. It wasn't even the countless up-and-coming startups vying for a piece of the drone market. No, Aiden's most formidable rival came from an unexpected source, his own peers. At the same tech conference where Aiden had first introduced his drones, a new player emerged, an adolescent prodigy named Ethan Rivers. Ethan, at 11 years old, had taken the tech world by storm with a rival drone technology that had an almost identical premise to Aiden's. His drones, like Aiden's, were equipped with self-repair systems and cutting-edge AI. But there was one thing that set Ethan's drones apart: his design was faster, more agile, and seemed to operate with a level of precision that was almost uncanny. Aiden first heard about Ethan's technology during a meeting with Musk and the team. Musk had been watching the new developments closely and mentioned the name with a hint of admiration in his voice. "This kid, Ethan Rivers, is something else. His drones are making waves, and he's been making headlines recently." Aiden had tried to brush it off at first, telling himself that competition was inevitable in the world of technology. But as more news outlets began covering Ethan's advancements, Aiden couldn't ignore the gnawing feeling that there was something personal about this competition. It wasn't just about the technology, it was about recognition. In a world where Aiden had once been the only young innovator in the room, Ethan had come along to challenge his position. The rivalry became even more pronounced when Ethan's company, Rivers Robotics, announced a breakthrough feature, a drone that could perform tasks autonomously in space. The implications were massive. If Aiden's drones could revolutionize industries on Earth, Ethan's drones had the potential to change the game in space exploration. This was a level of innovation that Aiden hadn't even considered, and it put him on the defensive. Ethan's rise in the tech world was meteoric, and soon he was being invited to all the same events as Aiden. The two were often mentioned in the same breath, the new titans of technology, was how the media described them. But it wasn't just the media that started to compare them, it was everyone. Investors began questioning Aiden's ability to stay ahead of the curve, while some of his original supporters began to shift their attention to Ethan's work. Musk, though still a strong advocate for Aiden, warned him that the landscape was shifting fast. "Aiden, you're incredible, but don't underestimate Ethan. You have to stay one step ahead of him." For the first time since his initial breakthrough, Aiden felt the sting of insecurity. The pressure to constantly innovate, to prove that his work was still the best, began to feel suffocating. No matter how hard he worked, no matter how much he pushed his team, it always seemed like Ethan was a step ahead. The media frenzy didn't help. Headlines like "Aiden Carter faces off with new prodigy, Ethan Rivers," and "The battle for the future of drone technology" seemed to follow Aiden everywhere he went. Every conference he attended, every interview he gave, the comparison to Ethan loomed large. At first, Aiden tried to remain calm, telling himself that his work spoke for itself. But as the days went by, the rivalry began to weigh on him. He couldn't help but wonder, was he still the best? Or had he been overtaken by this new, younger genius? The tipping point came when Aiden was invited to a major tech summit in New York, where he was scheduled to present the latest version of his drone. But Ethan had also been invited, and his presentation was slated right before Aiden's. It was a setup. The tension in the air was palpable as the two prodigies stood in the same room, separated by only a thin stage. When Ethan took the stage, the audience erupted in applause. His charm and confidence were undeniable, and his presentation was nothing short of spectacular. Aiden couldn't help but feel a twinge of jealousy as Ethan unveiled a new feature that allowed his drones to make real-time decisions based on external data, a level of AI sophistication that far exceeded anything Aiden had worked on. The crowd was captivated, and the media cameras were trained on Ethan, capturing every moment. Aiden knew that he couldn't afford to let the comparison get to him. He took a deep breath as it was his turn to present. But as he stepped onto the stage, a sense of doubt crept in. What if his drones weren't enough? What if his vision didn't match up to Ethan's groundbreaking technology? But then Aiden remembered the lesson he had learned during the earlier moments of struggle: the journey was never just about competing with others. It was about pushing the boundaries of his own potential. He had already accomplished so much, and the real test was staying true to his own vision, not measuring himself against someone else's success. With renewed determination, Aiden began his presentation. He didn't focus on Ethan's drones or the media buzz. Instead, he focused on the core of what had made his drones special from the start: their ability to repair themselves and operate autonomously in challenging environments. He spoke with passion about his vision for drones that could help people in disaster zones, assist in humanitarian efforts, and solve real-world problems. The crowd was captivated, not just by the technology, but by Aiden's sincerity and belief in his mission. When he finished, there was a long moment of silence before the applause erupted, louder than before. It wasn't about being better than Ethan. It was about staying true to his own journey. And in that moment, Aiden realized that no matter how many rivals he faced, the only true competition was the one he had with himself. The pressure might never fully go away, but as long as he stayed grounded in his purpose, no one could take that away from him. The world was watching Aiden now. After his presentation at the Tech Summit, he became a household name, cementing his place as one of the brightest young minds in technology. But with that attention came a dangerous new reality. The world of high-stakes innovation wasn't just about brilliance, it was also about survival. Aiden had always been aware of the pressures that came with success, but nothing had prepared him for the darker side of the tech world: the intense corporate espionage, manipulation, and sabotage that lurked beneath the surface. As his drones became more popular and influential, some very powerful people began to take notice. One afternoon, as Aiden sat in his office reviewing the latest feedback on his drones, his phone buzzed. It was a message from one of his trusted engineers, Clara. "Aiden, we've noticed some strange activity in the systems. It looks like someone has been trying to hack into our prototypes. We need to talk." Aiden's heart skipped a beat. He quickly typed back a response. "What do you mean? Who would do that?" Clara's reply came almost immediately: "We don't know yet, but it's not just any random hacker. This looks coordinated, maybe even inside." Aiden's mind raced as he left his office and made his way to the lab. Clara and the rest of the engineering team were already gathered around a large table, their faces tense. Clara turned to him as he entered, her expression serious. "We've found traces of a hack in our servers. Someone is trying to reverse engineer our designs." Aiden frowned. "But why? Our technology isn't even out on the market yet. Who would want to steal it?" "Maybe someone who doesn't want you to succeed," Clara said quietly. Aiden's thoughts immediately turned to Ethan. He'd been their biggest rival, and while Aiden had always respected his work, this sudden breach seemed too coincidental. Could Ethan have been involved? Could someone in his circle be behind it? It felt like the most obvious explanation, but Aiden didn't want to jump to conclusions. "Do we have any leads?" Aiden asked. Clara shook her head. "Not yet. The hacking traces are sophisticated, and they've been masked well. But whoever it is knows exactly what they're doing. The next few days were a blur. Aiden and his team worked tirelessly to patch the security breaches, but the attacks kept coming. It wasn't just one system being targeted, multiple drones, as well as the core AI, were under attack. Aiden couldn't help but feel like someone was systematically trying to destroy everything he had worked for. The media didn't help either. Reports about Aiden's technological war with Ethan Rivers began to surface. Whispers of a corporate battle, a race to the top, fueled the narrative that there was more at play than just a friendly competition. The pressure was mounting, and Aiden found himself second-guessing every move. Aiden knew he couldn't just sit back and wait for the next attack. He needed to take action. The first step was to meet with Musk. Musk, who had always been a mentor and a figure of unwavering confidence, was one of the few people Aiden trusted to help him navigate the political minefield that had suddenly opened before him. When Aiden arrived at SpaceX headquarters, Musk was waiting for him. "Aiden, I've been hearing the rumors. I know it's been rough, but you need to stay calm. This is just the beginning." Aiden couldn't hide his frustration. "This isn't just some technical hiccup. Someone is actively trying to sabotage everything I've built. This isn't just business, it's personal." Musk raised an eyebrow. "Personal? You think someone's coming after you specifically?" "I don't know," Aiden said, his voice tight. "But it feels like it." Musk leaned back in his chair, his gaze distant. "Aiden, I've been in this game for a long time. I've had my share of enemies, and you'd be naive to think you won't have yours too. You've made an impact, and people who feel threatened by that will stop at nothing to bring you down." Aiden felt a chill run down his spine. Musk's words were a harsh reminder that success in the tech world came with a price. And for the first time, Aiden realized just how much he had to lose. "You have to be smarter than they are," Musk continued. "You have to expect these kinds of challenges. But don't let it distract you from your mission." Aiden nodded, though doubt still lingered in his mind. "I don't know who's behind this, but I will find out. I won't let them destroy everything I've worked for." That night, Aiden stayed up late, working with his team to strengthen security protocols and track the source of the attacks. Clara had managed to trace the hacking attempts to a server located in a remote part of the world, but it was encrypted and nearly impossible to penetrate. Aiden knew that time was running out. Whoever was behind the sabotage wasn't just trying to steal his designs, they were trying to make sure he couldn't compete. And in the high-stakes world of technology, that kind of threat could be deadly. As the days went by, Aiden grew more paranoid. He started to suspect that there were people closer to him than he thought who were involved in the attacks. Could someone on his team be working with the enemy? The thought gnawed at him, but he couldn't let fear cloud his judgment. The truth was out there, and Aiden was determined to find it. The breakthrough came unexpectedly. Clara managed to break through the encryption on one of the hacked files. It wasn't much, but it was enough to reveal the identity of the hacker, a former employee of a rival tech firm that had recently gone bankrupt. The connection was clear, a disgruntled former employee seeking revenge. But the deeper Aiden dug, the more complicated the situation became. The hacker wasn't acting alone. There was someone higher up pulling the strings. The trail led Aiden to a shadowy figure in the corporate world, a name he had heard whispered but never really considered: Randall Hayes, a ruthless investor known for buying out companies and destroying their competition. Hayes had been eyeing Aiden's company for months, and it seemed that now, he was willing to do whatever it took to eliminate Aiden as a threat. Aiden was shaken. The revelation hit him harder than he had anticipated. Randall Hayes was a powerful player in the industry, and taking him on would mean going up against some of the most influential people in the business world. But Aiden was no longer the scared kid who had built drones in his garage. He had come this far, and he wasn't about to let anyone take that away from him. It was time to go on the offensive. Hit subscribe and leave a comment with where you're watching from. This story might just spark a new beginning. What's one thing that always pushes you forward, even when things get tough? The name Randall Hayes echoed in Aiden's head like a drumbeat. Ruthless. Strategic. Unrelenting. The man was infamous in tech circles for buying up emerging companies, gutting them, then flipping their patents for profit. He wasn't a creator, he was a predator. And now he had his eyes on Aiden. Back in his office, Aiden stared at the whiteboard where Clara had scribbled everything they knew: timelines of the cyber attacks, digital fingerprints, patterns of server pings, and the web of shell companies that all pointed back to Hayes. It was a mess, but it was enough. "This guy doesn't play fair," Clara muttered, tapping her marker on the board. "He's not coming for your drones. He's coming for your reputation. If you lose that, the rest falls apart." Aiden felt a knot in his stomach. She was right. Innovation alone wasn't enough anymore, perception mattered just as much as the code. If Hayes could make Aiden look unstable, unreliable, or compromised, investors would pull out. Partnerships would vanish. Musk might have his back, but even he couldn't hold up an empire on goodwill alone. "So what's our play?" Aiden asked. "We're not hackers. We can't go after him the same way." Clara gave a wry smile. "We don't need to hack him. We need to expose him. Publicly." Aiden blinked. "Like a press release?" "Bigger," she said. "A documentary-style exposé. Show the world who he really is, what he's doing behind the scenes, and how he's trying to silence innovation. You've got a platform, Aiden. People listen to you. So talk." The idea was bold. Risky. But it made sense. Aiden wasn't the kind of person who played dirty, but he could play smart. And the truth was on his side. Over the next few days, Aiden's team quietly assembled a small, trusted group of videographers, investigative researchers, and media consultants. They called it Project Echo, a campaign designed to reveal the patterns of sabotage and corporate bullying Hayes had left behind over the years. Failed startups. Lawsuits that had been silenced. Former employees who had signed ironclad NDAs, but were willing to talk anonymously. They compiled everything: recorded interviews, digital trails, and even Aiden's own account of the sabotage he and his team had endured. Clara handled the tech investigation, while Aiden recorded heartfelt narration that blended technical insights with his emotional journey. It wasn't just about exposing Hayes, it was about defending the soul of innovation. And Aiden's voice, still only 11 years old but carrying the conviction of someone far older, struck a deep chord. Then came the decision no one expected. Aiden chose to release Project Echo before unveiling his next-gen drone. "We need to clean the air before we fly," he told Musk, who paused for a moment, then nodded. "I hope you're ready for what's coming," Musk warned. Hayes won't go quietly. The video dropped on a Sunday morning. Aiden released it across all platforms at once, with a simple caption. "The truth matters. Watch this before you judge what comes next." Within hours, it went viral. People were stunned. Not just by the story, but by Aiden's calm, clear delivery of it all. They watched, horrified, as connections were drawn between Hayes and several startup collapses that had previously seemed unrelated. They listened as former employees, their voices masked, described a culture of manipulation, bribery, and industrial sabotage. The world responded. Social media blew up. Hashtags like #ProtectYoungInnovators and #JusticeForStartups trended globally. News outlets picked up the story within hours, and by Monday morning, Hayes' name was on the front page of nearly every major tech blog and financial paper. But the storm wasn't without backlash. Hayes responded with fury. He called Aiden's claims baseless and emotionally manipulative. His legal team sent cease and desist letters to Aiden's company, Musk's firms, and even individual employees. Aiden refused to back down. Then, the unexpected happened. Ethan Rivers, his rival, posted a video of his own. In it, Ethan stated, "I may be Aiden Carter's competitor, but we're both kids trying to build a better future. No one, especially not a corporate raider like Hayes, should have the power to destroy that. I stand with Aiden. The moment went viral. Two of the youngest minds in tech, previously painted as enemies, stood united against a common threat. The media narrative flipped instantly, from a feud to a revolution. Meanwhile, Musk called Aiden into a closed-door meeting. "You turned the tide," he said. "Now it's time to deliver." He opened a sleek black case on the table in front of Aiden. Inside was a refined version of the drone they'd spent years perfecting. The shell was sleeker, the core AI faster, and it was loaded with features Aiden hadn't even dared show publicly yet, until now. "This," Musk said, "is the prototype you take to the world. Let them see what you've been building while they were trying to tear you down." Aiden stared at the drone, the weight of everything crashing down on him at once. He had stood his ground, protected his vision, and survived the biggest blow yet. But the war wasn't over. Hayes wasn't going to disappear. If anything, things were just starting to escalate. Still, Aiden wasn't scared. He was ready. The weight of the moment hung heavy in the air. For weeks, the tech world had buzzed with controversy and speculation. Some still questioned whether Aiden's claims against Randall Hayes were exaggerated, others had already labeled Aiden a hero, a whistleblower, a kid standing alone against the corruption of big money. But one thing was clear, all eyes were on what Aiden would do next. And now, the world was about to see. The launch of Aiden's newest prototype was scheduled at Tesla's R&D center in Palo Alto. The event wasn't just a product reveal, it was a statement. Invitations had gone out to top-tier journalists, major investors, and key global stakeholders. The live stream countdown had already drawn millions of viewers before a single word had been spoken. Backstage, Aiden stood quietly with Clara and Musk. He wore his signature zip hoodie, jeans, and sneakers, not to make a statement, but because he refused to be anything other than himself. Clara gave his shoulder a reassuring squeeze. "You ready?" Aiden nodded, but his throat was dry. He looked over at Musk, who gave him a small smile. "Remember, this isn't about proving anyone wrong. It's about proving you were right to believe in yourself." With that, the lights dimmed, the stage lit up, and the crowd hushed. A voice came through the speakers. "Introducing, the Helix One." Aiden stepped onto the stage, the cheers from the audience almost startling in their volume. He gave a small wave, then approached the podium. He looked into the camera and spoke clearly. "This isn't just a drone. It's not a toy, a tool, or a headline. It's a promise that innovation doesn't belong only to the powerful, or the adults, or the corporations. It belongs to everyone brave enough to imagine something better. The Helix One is our answer to that." Behind him, the curtains parted. A sleek, metallic drone rose slowly from a platform, suspended midair with a soft hum. It looked different from his earlier models, smaller, but more powerful. It gleamed like liquid silver under the lights, its wings folding and unfolding with a smoothness that seemed almost organic. The audience gasped as the drone moved on its own, adjusting midair, scanning the crowd, then shifting into formation with two other drones that appeared beside it. They danced together, no remote control, no commands. Pure autonomous precision. Clara stepped onto the stage with a tablet, handing it to Aiden. "Let's show them what it can do." With a tap, Aiden activated situation simulation mode, a feature no other drone on the market had successfully implemented. On the big screen behind him, a real-time simulation began. Scenario 1, Earthquake Relief. The drone scanned for heat signatures under rubble, deploying tiny probe bots to relay signals and map survivors in real time. Scenario 2, Forest Fire Response. The drone coordinated with fire retardant units, creating a containment path by identifying wind shifts and terrain changes. Scenario 3, Low-Orbit Satellite Repair. A Helix drone extended flexible magnetic arms, securing itself to a damaged panel, running diagnostics, and patching a circuit, all without human assistance. The crowd was dead silent. Then came the feature Aiden hadn't told anyone about. Not Musk. Not Clara. Not even Ethan. "There's one last thing I want to show you," Aiden said, stepping away from the podium. He tapped another button on the tablet. The Helix drone hovered in front of him, then gently rotated. A small compartment opened in its core. Inside was a living plant, thriving in a sealed, oxygen-regulated chamber. This drone is the first in history capable of sustaining life in autonomous microenvironments. We've been testing them in simulated Martian conditions. And they work. The implication was massive. Helix 1 wasn't just a tool, it was a symbol of what the future could hold. A drone that could locate survivors, fight wildfires, repair space equipment, and carry the seeds of life across the galaxy. The room erupted in applause. Reporters jumped to their feet. Flashbulbs went off. On social media, the live stream exploded. #Helix1 began trending globally in under 10 minutes. But just as the celebration started, an alert flashed across Aiden's tablet screen: incoming unauthorized signal, level 3 breach. Clara, seeing it too, leaned over. "It's a new attack, someone's trying to hijack the drone, Liv." The lights dimmed slightly as the drone began to twitch in midair. The audience didn't notice yet, but Aiden did. His heart jumped into his throat. He pulled Clara aside. "Can we override?" She shook her head. "Not from here. They're deep in the firmware. Whoever this is, they planned this." Musk stepped onto the stage, cool as ever, and placed a firm hand on Aiden's shoulder. "Talk to it, Aiden. You designed the AI. You know it better than anyone." It was a long shot, but worth trying. Aiden closed his eyes and whispered the override sequence he'd coded deep into the Helix's core. Protocol, Phoenix override. Key phrase, stay grounded. The drone froze mid-twitch. Then, stillness. The lights flickered back on, and the Helix realigned itself into perfect hover mode. A quiet gasp swept through the crowd as they realized something had just gone very wrong, and then very, very right. Aiden turned back to the mic. "What you just saw, was our system's ability to self-correct in real time, even under cyber attack. We've built not just intelligence into this drone, but resilience." The crowd roared. After the show, Aiden stood backstage, exhausted but triumphant. Ethan appeared, hands in his pockets, grinning. "You could have warned me you were gonna go full Iron Man on stage," he joked. Aiden smiled. "Thought I'd let it be a surprise." Musk joined them both. "You've made a powerful statement today. But be ready. You embarrassed some very powerful people on a very public stage." Aiden nodded. "Let them come. We'll be ready." The morning after the Helix 1 reveal felt surreal. Aiden woke up to headlines that didn't just praise his technology, they exalted him as a symbol. The boy who beat the system. Move over, Elon. Aiden Carter just redefined the future. Tech's youngest titan outsmarts corporate sabotage. Live. The live stream had crossed 120 million views overnight. Schools were replaying his presentation in classrooms. Parents were emailing to thank him for inspiring their kids. And just like that, Aiden Carter had become something bigger than a prodigy, he was a movement. But not everyone was celebrating. Randall Hayes was furious. At exactly 10:34 a.m., Aiden received a cease and desist letter via encrypted email. His legal team flagged it before it even reached his inbox. Hayes was accusing him of slander, intellectual theft, and cybercrime, threatening to sue for damages exceeding $250 million. Clara slapped the printout onto Aiden's desk. "This isn't about money," she growled. "It's a scare tactic. He's trying to keep us busy with lawyers so we stop innovating." Aiden read it twice. Then he calmly tore the letter in half and dropped it into the shredder. "We don't stop. Ever. The legal team was already working on a public response, one that would highlight the sabotage attempts and Hayes's pattern of shutting down young inventors. But Aiden wanted more than defense. He wanted to fight back. And Musk had an idea. "What if we file first," he said during a closed-door meeting at Tesla HQ, "go on offense. Use everything you've got. You've already exposed him to the public. If we move now, we take this to court and the court of public opinion. File a lawsuit for attempted theft of intellectual property. Cyberterrorism. Malicious interference." Aiden glanced at Clara, who nodded. "It's risky," she said, "but it sends a message, no more bullying." So they did it. Within 24 hours, Carter Technologies filed a federal lawsuit against Randall Hayes and his shell corporation, RHI Holdings, backed by over 100 pages of forensic data and expert affidavits. It wasn't just a legal battle, it was a statement to every young innovator who'd ever been told they weren't ready, weren't big enough, or didn't belong. The response? Nuclear. Hayes's legal team went into overdrive. He appeared on national news, calling the entire thing a childish vendetta from a boy who couldn't handle competition. He doubled down, painting Aiden as a manipulated figurehead, claiming Musk and others were using the kid as a pawn. Aiden didn't flinch. Instead, he made a short video, a calm, unscripted message from his workshop. "I'm not a pawn. I'm not perfect. I'm not a billionaire or a boardroom shark. But I am an innovator. And no one, no matter how rich or connected, should be allowed to bully the future out of kids who just want to build something better." The clip exploded. Again. Support poured in from everywhere, students, teachers, startup founders, even members of Congress. Several organizations offered to fund Aiden's legal battle pro bono. #StandWithAiden trended for 3 straight days. But while the public rallied, inside the company, tensions rose. Clara, who had been Aiden's right hand for months, began to show signs of exhaustion. Long nights, constant pressure, and stress from defending against cyber attacks had worn her thin. One evening, as Aiden reviewed a prototype update, Clara finally snapped. "I'm tired of patching holes after every move," she said, slamming a tablet down. "We're fighting ghosts with duct tape. We need a real cybersecurity team, not just me writing Band-Aid code." Aiden was taken aback. "I know. I've been meaning to." "No, Aiden. You've been meaning to everything. I can't do this alone anymore." He swallowed hard. She was right. They had grown too fast. Aiden had poured everything into Helix One, but infrastructure, security, mental health, those things had fallen behind. For a moment, he wasn't a genius or a symbol, he was just a kid, overwhelmed, watching his friend burn out in real time. "I'm sorry," he said. "You're not alone. We'll build the team together." And they did. By the end of the week, Aiden brought in experts from Google X and MIT to help Clara lead a newly formed cyber defense unit. He also began hiring HR professionals and wellness coaches, something he never thought a startup run by a kid would need. Because this wasn't a project anymore. It was a company. A mission. And it had to be built to last. Still, amid the chaos, a new problem began to surface. Aiden started receiving encrypted emails from an anonymous source claiming to have insider intel on Hayes, deeper, darker things than Aiden's team had uncovered. They referenced hidden offshore accounts, illegal surveillance ops, and even bribed politicians. But they refused to reveal their identity. "If you want to bring Hayes down, you'll need me. Trust no one. Not even your own board." The emails were signed only. Cipher. Aiden stared at the screen, unsure if it was a trap, or the breakthrough he'd been waiting for. 3 days after the first anonymous email, Aiden still hadn't replied. The message from Cipher lingered like a storm cloud in his inbox, ominous, unpredictable, and impossible to ignore. He had reviewed it more than a dozen times, each pass through its lines raising new questions. Trust no one. Not even your own board. Aiden couldn't shake that last sentence. Who on his board? Musk? Clara? Ethan, now serving as a public advisor. It didn't make sense. These were people he trusted, people who'd stood by him through sabotage, public scrutiny, and now a massive legal war. But Cypher had information that hadn't been made public. Information even Clara didn't know, like the offshore shell companies Hayes was using to funnel money to silent stakeholders, including someone listed under a code name that matched a Carter Technologies shareholder. Someone inside his own company might have been working with Hayes. The next email came at 2:47 a.m. I'll give you proof. One name. You decide what to do with it. Ready? Below was a blinking cursor and a text field. Live. Untraceable. Aiden hovered over the keyboard for a full minute, then typed. Yes. The screen refreshed. A new name appeared. Jackson Ryder. Aiden's blood ran cold. Jackson was one of the earliest investors in Carter Technologies. He'd come in after Aiden's first viral drone showcase, offering guidance, mentorship, and funding. He wasn't as visible as Musk, but he played a vital role in legitimizing Aiden's company to Silicon Valley elites. And now, Cypher was saying he'd sold Aiden out. Aiden didn't want to believe it. But the next attachment changed everything. Bank records. Email logs. Signed contracts showing a clear connection between Ryder and a shadow firm that was directly tied to RHI Holdings, Hayes' empire. Ryder had secretly invested in a company position to launch a knockoff of the Helix One just weeks after Aiden's reveal. Clara came into the office that morning to find Aiden still at his desk, pale and silent. "You've been up all night again?" she asked. Aiden didn't look up. "I think we've got a traitor." Clara froze. "Inside?" He nodded and handed her the tablet. She scrolled through the files, her expression darkening with each flick of her finger. "This is damning," she said finally. "But if you're wrong." "I'm not." Aiden's voice was steady now. "I want to confront him. Privately. But I need you watching from the other side of the glass. If anything feels off, pull me out." They set the meeting for 4 p.m. Ryder arrived at the downtown San Francisco office in his usual tailored suit and calm, mentor-like demeanor. He greeted Aiden with a grin, clearly unaware of what was coming. "Kid. You're everywhere these days. I've got friends at Stanford who want to name a building after you." Aiden didn't smile. He gestured to the seat across from him. "We need to talk." The moment Ryder sat down, the mood shifted. Aiden opened the tablet, turned it toward Ryder, and said only, "I know." Ryder blinked. "Know what?" Aiden played dumb. "I was hoping you'd tell me." Ryder's jaw tightened, just slightly. He glanced at the tablet again. He recognized the documents. He leaned back, folding his arms. "Where did you get these?" Aiden ignored the question. "Why, Jackson? After everything we built, why would you sell me out to him?" Ryder didn't answer at first. Then, in a calm voice, he said, "Because Hayes understands the game." Aiden flinched. "What game?" "The real one," Ryder said. "The one where brilliance isn't enough. Where patents mean nothing if someone outspends you. Where courtrooms are won before you even file." His words were like ice water. "You didn't think you'd get this far without losing something, did you?" Ryder continued. "I protected your company from the inside, Aiden. I made sure your board didn't implode. I kept your investors in check. I kept you alive. But when Hayes came knocking, I knew which side would win in the end." "So you hedged your bet," Aiden whispered. Ryder shrugged. "I did what was smart." Aiden stood up, his voice shaking. "No. You did what was cowardly. He walked out of the room. Clara was waiting, earpiece in, lips tight. You want to press charges? Aiden shook his head. Not yet. But he's out. Strip his board access. Freeze his shares. Make sure he can't sabotage anything else. It was a bold move, and risky. Ryder was connected. Removing him could shake confidence in Carter Technologies. But Aiden didn't care. He would not build his future on secrets and betrayal. That night, Cypher messaged again. You did well. He wasn't the only one. There's more. Ready for phase 2? Aiden didn't hesitate this time. Yes. But he had a new plan. He asked Clara to trace the messages, not in the traditional way, but through behavioral forensics. Writing patterns. Phrasing. Keystroke cadence. The style of communication. If Cypher knew so much, he had to be close. Very close. The more Aiden tried to focus on advancing Helix's next iteration, the more distracted he became. Cypher wasn't just leaking names and files, they were testing him. Pushing him to act, to dig deeper, to take bolder steps. The drop about Jackson Ryder had been only the beginning. Cypher's next messages suggested an even more disturbing possibility. Hayes wasn't working alone. This goes higher. Bigger than just corporate sabotage. Think government contracts. Think surveillance. Think Mars. Aiden stared at the screen. Mars. That wasn't a word Cypher would have used casually. Only a few people, very few, knew about the classified Mars simulations Aiden had been quietly developing with Musk in the Tesla bunker. The AI for autonomous exploration. The self-sustaining biospheres. The mineral mapping systems designed for long-term off-world colonization. That knowledge hadn't left their inner circle. Clara sat across from him, arms folded, watching him process it all. There's no way Cypher should know that, she said, voice low. Unless they're one of us, Aiden replied. He tapped the keys, his brain already racing through a matrix of timelines, NDA access lists, known project contributors. Clara leaned forward. We narrow the list. Run everything through a pattern-matching algorithm, compare word choices from Cypher's emails with our staff communications. Aiden nodded. Behavioral linguistics. I'll train a model on the email corpus from the last 8 months. We'll feed in Cypher's phrasing and see what pops. Let's go fishing, Clara said with a grin. They launched the operation that night, Project Looking Glass, silently scraping internal emails, Slack messages, development logs, and even transcribed voice memos. All legally accessible through company servers, but still invasive. Aiden didn't like spying on his team, but this was bigger than trust now. It was about survival. The results came back 3 hours later. 96.3% confidence match, Dr. Melody Voss. Aiden's jaw clenched. Melody was the AI architect hired 6 months ago to help build Helix's decision-making core. Quiet. Brilliant. Former DARPA researcher. She'd always kept her distance, polite, but never warm. Clara had even joked once, I'm not sure she's not a cyborg herself. Now she was the prime suspect behind Cypher. She knows everything, Clara muttered, pacing. Mars, Hayes, the board, she would have had access to it all. But why help us? Aiden asked. Why expose Ryder? Why warn me? Clara paused. Maybe she believes in you. Or maybe she believes in something else. Aiden made the call to confront her, not aggressively, but carefully. He set a meeting in the sublevel lab, where she often worked alone late into the night. He told her they needed to discuss the next phase of the Helix mission. She arrived exactly on time. Pale blue sweater, clipboard in hand, hair tied back with machine-like precision. You wanted to talk about the Mars AI protocol, she asked, voice calm. Aiden stared at her, every instinct screaming that this was it. The moment. He tapped the screen in front of him. The last cipher message lit up. Melody didn't flinch. She walked to the desk, read the message, and said, "You traced me." A beat of silence. "Yes," Aiden replied. She nodded slowly. Then looked him in the eye for the first time in weeks. "Good." Clara, watching from behind mirrored glass, tensed. Ready to trigger lockdown if needed. "I had to test you," Melody said softly. "I had to know if you were ready. If you could lead this, when it gets bigger than Hayes. Bigger than drones. Bigger than Carter Technologies." "What are you talking about?" Aiden asked, confused. She turned to the wall console, entered a code, and pulled up a restricted file labeled Project Enclave, Global Autonomous Systems Initiative. Aiden blinked. "I've never seen this." "You weren't meant to." "Not yet," Melody said. "Hayes, he's just a symptom. The real threat is what people will do with your technology. What governments are already planning to do with it." On screen, Aiden saw blueprints for weaponized versions of Helix, drones armed with advanced targeting algorithms, smart explosives, even emotion mapping software for crowd control. "These aren't ours," he said, horrified. "No. They're Hayes's versions. Based on your early prototypes. He's been selling modified builds to foreign buyers. They're calling it the Sentinel program." Aiden turned pale. "He's turning Helix into a weapon." Melody nodded grimly. "He's already made deals in 3 countries. And now, thanks to the lawsuit, he's accelerating it, using the attention to push legislation that will legalize private AI defense systems. It's why I went rogue. Why I created Cypher." Aiden was silent for a long time. Then he said, "Why didn't you just come to me?" "Because you were still a kid," she said, not unkindly. "You needed to grow up fast. You needed to be tested. So I pushed. I leaked. I watched how you responded." Aiden looked at her again, really looked. She wasn't the cold technocrat he thought she was. She was scared. "What do we do now?" he asked. Melody pulled a slim drive from her coat pocket and handed it to him. "We go public again. But this time, it's not just about you. It's about all of us. We expose the Sentinel program. We show the world what happens when genius gets hijacked by greed. But we'll need help, legal, technical, and global. And if we don't?" Clara asked, entering the lab quietly. "Then in 2 years," Melody said, "you'll see a Helix drone on a battlefield. Killing people. In your name." Aiden stared at the drive in his hand. It was no longer about drones. Or ego. Or headlines. It was about responsibility. And it was just getting started. The next morning, the sun rose over Palo Alto like any other, but for Aiden Carter, nothing felt normal anymore. He stood on the rooftop of the Carter Technologies building, gripping the slim drive Melody had given him. Inside it was everything: schematics, contracts, covert memos, proof that Helix's stolen code was being weaponized under a project called Sentinel. This wasn't about drones anymore. It was about the future of AI warfare. And he had a decision to make. Clara joined him on the rooftop, holding 2 cups of coffee, his favorite, just the way he liked it. No sugar. Heavy cream. "You didn't sleep again," she said, handing him one. He gave her a half smile. "Neither did you." They sipped in silence. Finally, Clara broke it. "So. What's the move?" Aiden looked out at the skyline, his voice low. "We can't do this alone. If we're going to take this public, and take down Sentinel, we need allies. Real ones. People with reach, power, and most importantly, backbone." Clara nodded. "You thinking media?" government, whistleblowers. All of it. Back in the war room, a newly repurposed lab floor lined with screens, maps, and private networked AI, Aiden and his small circle, now including Melody and Clara, began forming the blueprint for an international alliance to stop Project Sentinel before it could go live. They called it, the ARC Coalition. ARC, short for Autonomous Responsibility Coalition, would be a blend of technologists, journalists, former intelligence officers, and civil rights activists, each vetted, trusted, and willing to stand against militarized AI. Not as a conspiracy theory, but as an imminent threat. Clara handled outreach to her old MIT contacts and open-source activist groups. Melody began decrypting and verifying more files from the stolen Sentinel archives. Aiden's job? Get Musk on board. It wasn't an easy one. When Aiden briefed Elon Musk later that day, he expected shock, or at least skepticism. Instead, Musk sat quietly, arms folded, eyes locked on the floating Sentinel schematic spinning mid-air in Aiden's projection room. I warned about this in 2017, Musk finally said. Nobody listened. You built the future, Aiden, and someone stole it to build the end of it. Aiden's voice trembled slightly. Can I count on you? Musk stood. You're going to need more than my support. You'll need infrastructure, reach, protection. He pulled out a secured drive from his jacket. I'll give you access to Tesla's global satellite net. For secure communication. Real-time broadcasting. When you drop this bomb, the world won't be able to look away. Aiden accepted the drive, stunned. Thank you. Musk gave a half-smile. Just promise me this, don't become the thing you're fighting. Aiden nodded. I won't. By week's end, ARC had quietly gathered its first 6 members. 1. Dr. Nia Patel, former UN advisor on ethics in autonomous weapons. 2. Julian Cho, a high-profile investigative journalist with connections to the Washington Post and BBC. 3. Luis Morelli, a former DARPA engineer turned whistleblower. 4. Mara Jensen, an ex-CIA cyber operative, now a consultant for Amnesty Tech. 5. Rajiv Banerjee, founder of Code for Humanity, an anti-surveillance NGO. 6. Karen Gwynn, one of Clara's former professors and a cybersecurity savant with ties to Interpol. Each one came with experience, credibility, and skin in the game. Each one knew the risk. They met for the first time via a private ArcNet transmission, faces flickering onto the screen in silence, waiting for Aiden to speak. He took a deep breath and said, "The world thinks AI is just about convenience. Self-driving cars. Smart fridges. But this is what happens when no one's watching. Project Sentinel is real. It's illegal. And it's being sold under our noses. If we don't stop it, we may never get the chance again." He shared the files. One by one, their expressions changed: shock, anger, resolve. Mara Jensen, the ex-CIA op, was the first to speak. "You're gonna need whistleblower protection. Witness security. Legal backing." Dr. Patel followed, and diplomatic leverage. "I can get you in front of the UN Ethics Council. But it'll be hostile." Aiden nodded. "We're not trying to shame anyone. We're trying to prevent war." Julian Cho leaned forward. "Then we need a story. A timeline. You. Hayes. The theft. The attack. The reveal. A beginning, a middle, and a very dramatic end." Aiden felt it then, not fear, not excitement, responsibility. This wasn't just a tech leak or a personal mission anymore. This was history in the making. While ARC built its alliance, Randall Hayes was preparing his own. Encrypted channels buzzed inside the RHI Holdings headquarters in New York. Black SUVs came and went at all hours. A new group of lobbyists was seen entering congressional buildings in D.C., and insider sources reported that private demonstrations of the Sentinel Scout unit were already taking place with foreign defense officials. Hayes knew the leak was coming. And he wasn't going to let a kid's conscience destroy a trillion-dollar future. He issued a private directive. If Carter wants a war, we'll give him one. Discredit him. Find his weaknesses. If he won't break those around him. At 2:08 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, Clara's phone buzzed with a single text from an unknown number. Check your dad's clinic records. He's not safe anymore. Her heart dropped. She bolted upright, pulled open her laptop, and tapped into the private server where her father's medical data was stored. What she saw made her go cold. His health insurance had been flagged for fraud investigation. His license was under review. And a red notice had been posted. Someone was trying to destroy her family. When Aiden heard, he said nothing at first. Then he looked up at Clara, fire in his eyes. Okay. They want to play dirty. Let's show them what happens when you corner the kids who build the future. The world was already teetering on edge when the leak hit. At 9 a.m. Pacific, ARC Coalition executed their plan, an orchestrated data drop across major news networks, independent media outlets, and encrypted forums. Julian Cho's expose hit first on the front page of the Washington Post. Project Sentinel, how a billion-dollar AI weapon program was built on stolen genius. Within minutes, it went global. BBC, Al Jazeera, and The Guardian followed. By noon, #Sentinel Leak was trending across platforms. Millions of people were watching the live-streamed press briefing from Carter Technologies HQ, where Aiden stood flanked by Clara, Melody, and 2 ARC members. He didn't read from a script. He didn't wear a suit. He just looked into the camera and spoke. I created Helix 1 to save lives. But parts of it were stolen, repurposed, and sold to power a military-grade AI weapons platform. This wasn't a bug. It was sabotage. And it's already being deployed, quietly, illegally, globally. We've released the evidence to the public because the world deserves to know. And because the people profiting from this won't stop unless you make them. This is bigger than me. It's about what we allow machines to do in our name. A beat of silence. Then, you wanted the future. Now it's up to you to protect it. He stepped back. Reporters shouted questions. Some accused him of being naive, of leaking sensitive national security information. Others called him a hero. Either way, the world was now involved. And just like that, everything exploded. Within 24 hours. Protests erupted outside RHI Holdings in New York and Washington, D.C. Lawmakers from 5 countries issued emergency statements demanding an investigation. The European Parliament suspended all AI-related weapons contracts pending review. A hacked Sentinel drone demo video leaked in Brazil, showing crowd control gone wrong, civilians injured during a live test in a favela. Clara was watching on the office screen, jaw tight. This isn't a leak anymore. It's a global incident. But not everyone was thrilled. Death threats flooded Carter Tech's inbox. Armed guards had to be posted outside their building. And online trolls painted Aiden as a fraud, a puppet for deep state interests, or worse, a spy. Then came the Hayes counterstrike. That night, Randall Hayes took the stage on a sanitized live stream from a staged innovation forum. His words were polished, his tone calm. He framed Sentinel as defense modernization and claimed the ARC Coalition had doctored evidence to defame him and destabilize global order. This is a dangerous time for innovation. We're being forced to choose between progress and panic, between real solutions and fear-fueled conspiracy. Then he dropped a bomb. Carter Technologies was never the innovator. We have proof that Helix 1 was reverse-engineered from unauthorized foreign research. The U.S. government is now investigating Aiden Carter and his team for intellectual property violations. Aiden watched the broadcast in stunned silence. Clara slammed her fist on the desk. He's flipping the narrative. Making you the thief. Worse, hours later, an FBI inquiry was confirmed. They wanted Aiden's full development logs, his patent trail, his emails. Not because they believed Hayes, but because politically, they couldn't ignore the story. It was chaos. Melody pulled Aiden aside in the lab that night. They're coming for your credibility. If they ruin your reputation, everything you built goes with it. Aiden turned to her, exhausted but sharp. Then we go bigger. I'm not hiding. If Hayes wants to turn this into a war of narratives, we'll beat him at his own game. ARC's media team worked overnight with Cho and Clara to produce a rapid response video, part documentary, part call to action. It opened with drone footage from the leaked Sentinel test, cut with a voiceover from Aiden. This isn't science fiction. It's already here. And it's already hurting people. Then it showed his early work, the Helix prototypes, the timestamps, the sabotage logs, the cease and desist letters. Every detail was verified. Every receipt exposed. The final 30 seconds cut to a haunting quote from Dr. Nia Patel. Weapons built without ethics don't malfunction. They do exactly what they're designed to do. When the video dropped, it clocked 60 million views in 12 hours. For the first time, public opinion shifted decisively. Protesters outside Carter Technologies began chanting in support. A global petition to halt Sentinel passed 5 million signatures. Major AI ethicists from Stanford and Oxford sided with Aiden, publicly denouncing Hayes' response. But that night, just as things were turning, Aiden received another encrypted message. It wasn't from Cypher. It was from someone claiming to be an insider at the Department of Defense. The message read: "They're about to greenlight Sentinel under a new name. The leak only slowed them down. You have 72 hours before rollout begins. Hayes isn't running the show anymore. It's much bigger than him." Asterisk. Attached was a document with a government project header. Operation, Strikeleaf. Classified, Level 9. Deployment window, 72 hours. Aiden stared at the screen. This wasn't just a corporate battle anymore. This was a countdown to deployment. The countdown had started. 72 hours until Operation Strikeleaf launched, an AI-driven global surveillance and strike program hidden under layers of government red tape and military jargon. While the world was distracted by public outcry and media noise, the real power players had quietly moved the pieces forward. And Aiden Carter was running out of time. He sat in the basement lab, sleepless, surrounded by screens, wires, caffeine-stained notebooks, and a whiteboard scrawled with red marker phrases like, "Where is Strikeleaf launching from? What's their comms relay? How do we intercept? Do we go public or go dark?" Clara burst in, laptop under her arm, breathless. "We found it." Aiden looked up, hope flashing in his eyes. "Where?" "Offshore facility. Atlantic coast. It's not labeled as military, but it's running on a Black Ops grid linked to DARPA and RHI satellite contracts." Melody joined, pushing open a second monitor feed. It displayed a series of rotating drone units, each marked SL-01, SL-02, and so on, Sentinel variants. "They're already being programmed," Melody said. "Each one has biometric tracking, independent lethal decision-making, and remote override encryption. Once they go live, there's no pulling them back." Aiden leaned forward, the weight of it hitting him all at once. "They're building kill bots with my brain." Clara placed a hand on his shoulder. "Then let's break their brains." With time running out, ARC Coalition assembled for an emergency encrypted briefing. On screen were their most trusted allies, Dr. Patel in Geneva, Julian Cho in D.C., Luis Morelli rerouted from Mexico, and Karen Nguyen operating from a mobile server farm in Estonia. "Strikeleaf is operating under sovereign immunity," Kara reported. Even if we leak it, no one will act fast enough to stop the launch. They'll stall with red tape. Julian added, we don't need Congress. We need control. Aiden nodded. We take down their command servers. We stop the launch ourselves. The group went quiet. You're talking about hacking into a US military-grade satellite network, Patel said carefully. That's not a protest. That's cyber warfare. I'm not doing it to make a point, Aiden replied. I'm doing it to keep these things from killing people in my name. Luis chimed in. I can spoof the GPS signals to disrupt drone deployment, but I'll need someone inside the facility to run a blind relay. Melody raised her hand. I'll do it. Clara turned sharply. No. If they catch you. I'm the only one who knows the firmware. I know how to disable the logic core before it boots into autonomy, Melody said calmly. Besides, they'd never expect me. Aiden looked between them. He didn't want to send anyone into the lion's den. But he also knew Melody was right. So he set the plan into motion. Using a forged DARPA credentials package obtained by Mara Jensen, Melody posed as a system integrity auditor and gained access to the Strikeleaf offshore command site under heavy security. Clara tracked her vitals from the Ark War room. Aiden watched in real time as Melody passed checkpoints, entered the launch silo, and placed a discrete relay node behind the central control panel. This is insane, Clara whispered. She's walking through the belly of a monster. Back at Ark HQ, Kara ran a digital war drum, building a false satellite health report to mask their infiltration. Julian prepped his next leak in case the mission failed, a full archive of Strikeleaf documents to be released posthumously. They were all in. At 11:22 a.m., with 58 hours left on the clock, Aiden sat at his terminal. Relays are active. Melody's patch is live, Kara confirmed. Copy, Aiden said. Beginning sequence. He entered the neural override code he had embedded deep within the original Helix AI. Something no one, not even Hayes, knew still existed. It wasn't a kill switch. It was a conscience. He called it the Lazarus Protocol. Designed as a safeguard during Helix's early experiments, Lazarus activated an ethical pause layer, essentially making the AI refuse orders it couldn't justify through harm reduction logic. Now, he was about to upload that protocol into every Sentinel drone on the launch deck. This better work, Clara whispered. Aiden hit execute. At 11:39 a.m., something went wrong. Firewall spiking, Kara said. They're on to us. Counter-intrusion in progress. Inside the facility, Melody's audio cut out. Then her camera. Clara stood up. We've lost her. Aiden's knuckles went white on the keyboard. No. Not yet. For 2 agonizing minutes, they had no signal. Then, ping. A single green light blinked on Melody's status icon. Then a message appeared on screen. Protocol injected. But I've been compromised. Leave me in. Clara gasped. She's sacrificing herself. Luis spoke up. Lazarus is live. The drones, they're hesitating. Across the ocean, inside the Strikeleaf launch bay, the SL units had stopped moving. Their eyes, those eerie red optical sensors, dimmed. Then turned blue. Override complete. Aiden sat back, heart racing. They had done it. For now, the drones had been neutralized. But Melody was gone, presumed captured or worse. Still, the tide was turning. Word of Strikeleaf's exposure had reached 3 major intelligence agencies. Public sentiment was boiling over. Even Congress, under pressure from viral protests, announced an emergency ethics review. Hayes, sensing the walls closing in, disappeared from the public eye. His offices were shuttered. His assets frozen under international scrutiny. Aiden didn't feel victory. Not yet. Only relief, and responsibility. The eyes of the world were fixed on Geneva. It was the most urgent assembly of global leaders since the Paris Climate Accord. Under pressure from millions of voices online and mounting evidence from the ARC coalition, the United Nations High Technology Council agreed to a historic emergency summit, one where autonomous weapons and global AI ethics would finally take center stage. At just 16 years old, Aiden Carter was about to address the most powerful room on Earth. And he was walking into a trap. 2 days had passed since the Lazarus Protocol stopped the Strike Leaf drones from deploying. The world had seen the power of AI to destroy, and the courage of a teenager and his rogue coalition to stop it. But the war wasn't over. Melody was still missing. And Randall Hayes, though silent, wasn't defeated. He was a man with too much to lose, and too many friends in high places. Clara paced the Geneva hotel suite as Aiden buttoned up a sharp navy suit. He hated wearing it. Felt like armor over a soul that was already bruised. "You sure about this?" she asked. "You stand up there, and it's not just about tech anymore. It's geopolitics. Militaries. Hidden deals." "I know," Aiden said, adjusting his tie. "But if we don't speak now, they'll pretend it never happened. And the next version of Strike Leaf won't hesitate." Outside, armored convoys moved through the streets. Protesters chanted on both sides of the hotel perimeter, some calling Aiden a savior. Others calling him a traitor. The world had split down the middle. Inside the UN chamber, diplomats from over 40 countries filled the crescent-shaped room. Journalists peered from the gallery above. Interpreters whispered translations. Lights dimmed. Then, the chairwoman stepped forward. "Mr. Carter. The floor is yours." Aiden approached the podium. Heart pounding. Palms damp. Cameras locked on. He took a deep breath. And began. "I didn't want to become the face of this. I just wanted to build something that mattered. But someone took what I built and twisted it into a weapon. Not a hypothetical one, a real one. Deployed without oversight, hidden from the public, capable of making life-and-death decisions in milliseconds. If you let this stand, if you let corporations and militaries race toward autonomous combat, you won't just change warfare. You'll change what it means to be human." There was silence. Then, scattered applause. Then, full room applause. Aiden stepped back, emotionally drained, as Dr. Nia Patel from the ARC coalition approached to deliver proposed resolutions, limiting autonomous weapons, establishing transparency protocols, and protecting whistleblowers. It was working. Until the betrayal. A man stood near the back of the chamber. Gray suit. Steely eyes. Ambassador Lowell Baines, U.S. Special Representative on Technological Security. A man who hadn't been in the initial delegate list. He requested the floor. "Madam Chair, before we move forward with these resolutions, the United States government must present new evidence regarding Mr. Carter's AI systems and their involvement in unauthorized cyber activities." Aiden stiffened. "What?" Baines continued. "We have confirmation that Mr. Carter's Lazarus Protocol was used not only to neutralize U.S. property, but to access restricted defense networks. We are submitting a formal request for detainment and investigation." Gasps erupted. Clara stood. "This is a setup." Julian Cho, watching from the media box, grabbed his phone and started recording. Dr. Patel slammed her folder shut. "You're making the whistleblower the criminal." Baines didn't blink. "We are making sure that international law is respected. Innovation without accountability is just another form of chaos." Then came the final blow. "Furthermore, we have secured video evidence tying one of Carter Technologies' lead developers to the unauthorized access and deployment of military AI infrastructure." They displayed footage, grainy, silent, time-stamped. It showed Melody Voss, in Strikeleaf's server room, entering commands. Hayes had leaked the video. And it was edited. The Lazarus protocol injection had been cut. The audio feed removed. It now looked like Melody had sabotaged the entire system for her own gain. The chamber erupted in shouts. Aiden's voice shook. That's a lie. She saved lives. She sacrificed herself to stop it. Baines leaned forward. The facts are clear. This is no longer a question of ethics. It's a matter of national and international security. Then security officers stepped into the chamber. Julian's voice rang out from the gallery. This is how they silence truth. They build machines that kill, then arrest the ones who try to stop them. Cameras turned. Live stream spiked. Chaos bloomed. In the confusion, Clara grabbed Aiden's arm. We have to move. Now. With ARC coalition members running interference, Clara and Aiden slipped through a back hallway exit. Security scrambled behind them. The Swiss guards hesitated, torn between diplomatic neutrality and the optics of arresting a teenager who had just stopped an AI war. They made it outside. An unmarked black SUV was waiting. Luis Morelli waved from behind the wheel. Get in. The doors slammed. The car peeled off into the Geneva night. Inside, Aiden's head spun. They're going to use Melody as the scapegoat. Clara nodded, furious. And now they're coming for you. He sat in silence. For once, not because he didn't have anything to say, but because he was calculating. Processing. Planning. He looked at Clara. They want a war. Let's give them the one thing they're afraid of most. What's that? Aiden leaned forward, eyes burning with clarity. The truth. All of it. In front of the whole damn world. They called it the Silence Protocol. By dawn, Aiden Carter's name had vanished from nearly every major U.S. media outlet. News stations that once praised him had either pivoted to the official government line, or gone eerily quiet. Headlines no longer spoke of Project Sentinel or the leaked Strike-Leaf documents. Now, they read. Teen hacker under global investigation for cyber espionage. The shift was deliberate. Controlled. Manufactured. The same AI that had once powered your smart fridge and curated your social feed, was now scrubbing the truth. Aiden stared out the window of a safe house deep in the Swiss Alps. His face was pale in the glow of a dozen screens. Kara had just confirmed it, an algorithmic blackout had been deployed against him, targeted, sweeping, and effective. They're using neural NLP filters to bury you in real time, she said over the comm, it's like you never existed. Clara stood behind him, phone in hand. And we just got flagged by 5 different ISPs. They're trying to choke ArcNet. Luis swore in Spanish and punched a keyboard. They're choking everything. If we don't act fast, we'll be locked out of our own systems. Aiden didn't flinch. Instead, he said the words they'd all been dreading. It's time to launch the contingency. 2 weeks prior, long before Geneva, before Melody's capture, Aiden and Kara had designed a backup plan. Not to fight with code or press releases, but with something no algorithm could silence. The people. Operation Phoenix Signal was a distributed digital event, triggered by blockchain keys buried inside Helix 1's original code. It would unlock a torrent of audio, video, and metadata, proof of everything. The origins of Sentinel. Hayes private deals. The real Strike-Leaf rollout timeline. Melody's full, unedited server room feed. And internal emails that proved knowledge at the highest levels of government. But more than that, it would trigger a global call to code, a rallying cry to the open source community, hackers, engineers, whistleblowers, and everyday netizens who still believed in transparency. The idea wasn't to bring down a system. It was to drown it in truth. At 7 p.m. Greenwich Mean Time, every active Helix device across 17 countries received a blinking notification. Aiden Carter has a message for you. Tap to listen. It started simple, his voice, steady but raw. They've silenced the news. They've buried the leaks. They've even rewritten who I am. But they forgot one thing. The code remembers. Screens flickered worldwide. Subway stations, laptops, tablets, phones. Libraries. Cafes. Dorms. Living rooms. Then the files began to play. No news anchors. No talking heads. Just unfiltered, time-stamped, visual proof, Melody initiating the Lazarus Protocol. Hayes bragging about total battlefield automation. Black site documents. Back-channel payments. And millions of people watched. Kara's server map lit up like a digital wildfire. Over 12 million pings in the first 10 minutes, she shouted from the safehouse terminal. 20,000 independent mirrors spinning up. They can't stop it now. In LA, a group of Stanford CS students dumped copies of the Phoenix files into smart billboards across Silicon Valley. In Nairobi, Code for Humanity activists projected the video across a 12-story hotel. In Berlin, hackers breached a defense contractor's server and uploaded the evidence directly to their homepage. In Sao Paulo, protesters carried signs reading, "We are the firewall." The world didn't just watch. It responded. Within 24 hours, over 100 cities had reported Phoenix signal rallies. Anonymous collectives began taking down government shell sites linked to RHI. Leaked military contracts flooded independent forums. International pressure ramped up. Even AI models began rejecting Strikeleaf's code. The Lazarus Protocol had replicated, self-modifying within distributed systems. It was alive inside thousands of networks. A new kind of digital conscience. And it refused to obey unethical commands. Then, at the peak of the uprising, Kara gasped. "I've got something," encrypted burst from a dead frequency. Aiden turned. From where? Unknown location. Possibly subterranean. But the key matches Melody's biometric encryption. They decrypted it. It was grainy. Flickering. But unmistakably her voice. "I'm alive. I don't know where they've taken me, but I've found a way into their system. They're trying to pivot Sentinel into a civilian platform. New name, OmniView. It's surveillance. On a global scale. They're framing it as the safer option. Don't let them." Then static. Aiden gripped the table. "They're not done. Not even close." Clara looked around the room. "We can't just keep reacting. We need to end this. All of it." Luis stepped forward. "Then we need to go to the source." Kara nodded. "You mean the Foundry?" The Foundry was a secret AI fabrication facility, rumored to be where Sentinel's deepest core was built. No GPS tags. No documented address. But Melody's message gave them just enough to triangulate. Aiden looked around the war room, dusty, dim, packed with blinking servers and blinking hearts. "We've sparked the fire. Now we finish what we started." It was a daring move, one of desperation more than strategy. But at this point, desperation was the only thing left. Aiden had never felt so close to losing everything. And yet, every moment of uncertainty brought him one step closer to victory, or destruction. The Foundry, hidden deep within the icy expanse of the Swiss Alps, was not just a physical location. It was the beating heart of Sentinel, and now, it would be the place where Aiden would either seal his fate or rewrite the future of AI and humanity forever. The team gathered in the dimly lit safe house, surrounded by screens and holographic maps. Luis Morelli and Kara Hargrove were working furiously on the final phase of the infiltration plan, while Clara stood by Aiden's side, her arms crossed in a stance that spoke of both determination and worry. "We're going in. This is it," Aiden said, his voice sharp, betraying the anxiety coursing through him. The plan had to work, or everything they had fought for, every sacrifice, would be meaningless. I know, Clara replied, her voice steady. But we're not just taking out the tech, Aiden. We're dealing with people, Hayes, the Black Ops. They're not going to let you get anywhere near that facility without a fight. Aiden exhaled slowly, steeling himself. Then we fight. Luis, who had been deep in conversation with Kara about the operation's logistics, turned to them. Here's the breakdown. We'll be going in under the radar. Our best shot is to remain undetected until we breach the outer perimeter. Once we're inside, we'll have a narrow window to locate the central core and stop OmniView from being activated. Kara, looking every bit the hacker she was, spoke up. I've already hacked into the Foundry's internal security systems. I can keep their cameras looped for 15 minutes tops. After that, they'll be aware of our presence. Aiden nodded. Time was their biggest enemy. But we can make it work, Clara added. We've done impossible things before. The journey itself was nothing short of treacherous. The weather was against them, blinding snowstorms, high winds, and thick, icy terrain. They traveled in a black SUV, navigating narrow mountain roads that twisted like a serpent, guided only by Luis' expert driving and Kara's navigational data fed into her tablet. Aiden glanced out the window, watching as the vast wilderness seemed to swallow them whole. They weren't just going to a physical location. They were heading into the heart of the storm. The very place where everything had started, and where it all could end. They arrived at the base of a mountain range, the SUV skidding to a stop at a high-tech checkpoint. The Foundry, camouflaged beneath a snowdrift, was only accessible via a series of winding tunnels carved through the mountain. Clara leaned forward, her voice low but urgent. Luis, take us through. If we're going to make it past their radar, this has to be flawless. Luis didn't reply immediately, his fingers flying over the wheel, adjusting speed and taking sharp turns. I'm in, he muttered after a tense silence, before punching in a series of coordinates. The ground rumbled slightly as the SUV moved through an automated checkpoint. Inside, the air grew colder. The Foundry was an imposing complex, a labyrinth of concrete and metal that seemed to stretch infinitely in every direction. Security drones zipped overhead, and high-frequency jamming signals pulsed in the air, scrambling any attempts at communication. Aiden swallowed hard. His hands were clammy against the seat, but his mind was clear. He knew what they were up against. This wasn't just a fight for the future of AI, it was a fight for the truth itself. Once inside the main perimeter, the real challenge began. Kara took the lead, her fingers moving with practiced precision as she bypassed biometric scanners and digital locks. Behind her, Clara and Luis kept a watchful eye on their surroundings, weapons drawn, as Aiden remained silent, lost in his thoughts. They were walking through the belly of the beast now. As they moved deeper into the heart of the Foundry, the tension became palpable. It wasn't the cold that bit at their skin, it was the knowledge that they were mere moments away from confronting the very system that had orchestrated their downfall. 5 minutes until the security cameras go back online, Kara said, voice tight as she worked her way through the final set of encrypted gates. Aiden nodded. Let's move. We don't have much time. They moved with a sense of purpose, but the shadows seemed to stretch unnaturally, pressing in on them from all sides. It was as if the Foundry itself was alive, watching them. Finally, they reached the heart of the facility. The central core. Here, the entire system, the AI that powered Sentinel, the twisted rebranding into OmniView, was stored in a massive server array, glowing with cold blue light. A complex, labyrinthine structure of quantum processors and neural networks, pulsating with the power of 1,000 algorithms. This is it, Aiden whispered, his voice barely audible. Kara quickly set up her equipment, connecting a series of devices that would allow her to initiate the shutdown sequence. Just need a few more seconds. Then, the ground beneath them shook. A loud alarm echoed through the facility. Red lights flashed, and the sound of approaching security teams reverberated in the walls. Damn it, "They've found us," Luis cursed, taking aim at the approaching soldiers through a narrow corridor. "Get to the core, now." Aiden shouted, adrenaline surging as they sprinted toward the central system. With every step, they were closer to the truth. Closer to stopping Omniview. But as Aiden reached the main console, the doors slammed shut behind him. "Not so fast, Carter." Aiden's breath caught in his throat. He turned to see Randall Hayes standing at the entrance, flanked by armed soldiers. "You think you can just waltz in here and stop everything?" Hayes sneered, his face cold, calculating. Aiden took a deep breath, stepping forward. "This ends now, Hayes. It's over." Hayes smiled. "You really think the world is going to care about a few leaked files? You've already lost. Your little rebellion is over." "No," Aiden said firmly. "This is just the beginning." In that moment, the air seemed to crackle with tension. It wasn't just a fight for control of a machine. It was a fight for humanity's very soul. And Aiden was ready to win it. The silence in the room was deafening. Aiden stood facing Randall Hayes, the very man responsible for the rise of Omniview and the countless lives that had been crushed beneath its shadow. His team flanked him, ready for whatever came next. Kara, who had just finished setting up the device to trigger the core shutdown, stood at the console. She was typing furiously, but there was no time left to play it safe. Luis was on edge, eyes darting around the room as the armed soldiers closed in. Clara, ever vigilant, was already calculating the quickest escape routes. Hayes's smirk hadn't faltered. "You think you're the hero, Carter? You're just a pawn in a game far bigger than you. You can't stop what's already been set in motion." Aiden's eyes narrowed. The weight of the moment pressed on him. This wasn't just a confrontation about data, algorithms, or control. This was about what kind of future they would have. Was it a future ruled by fear and surveillance? Or would it be one of transparency and freedom? His voice was steady, calm, as he spoke. "You're wrong, Hayes. This isn't about me. It's about what you've done to people, what you've taken from them. This is about reclaiming their future." Hayes's lips curled into a cruel smile. "Is it? Or is this all just a juvenile fantasy of yours? You've lost, Carter. You're just a kid playing at things you don't understand." Aiden stood firm, the words hitting harder than they should have, but he wasn't about to back down. "Not now." "You may think I'm just a kid," Aiden said, his voice gaining strength. "But I'm the one who took down your empire. I'm the one who made people see who you really are. I'm the one who gave them back the power." Kara had just finished overriding the security system on the core. The countdown had begun. In mere minutes, Omniview would be shut down, its algorithms neutralized, and its surveillance grid dismantled. "Got it," Kara whispered, but before she could hit the final command, the room around them trembled. An electrical surge flickered across the main console. The system had detected their intrusion. "Damn it," Kara muttered. "It's reacting faster than I anticipated. I'll need more time." Aiden turned his attention back to Hayes, trying to buy her precious seconds. "We're almost done here, Hayes. You can stop pretending you still control everything." Hayes barked a laugh. "I've never had control, Carter. Not really. The system is bigger than you think. It's not just a tool for power, it's the future. And you're too blinded by idealism to see it." As he spoke, Hayes stepped aside, motioning for his soldiers to move in. "Your little revolution ends here." Luis, ever prepared, shot first. The sharp sound of gunfire echoed through the hall, but it wasn't aimed at Hayes. It was aimed at the soldiers closing in on them. A firefight erupted, loud and chaotic, with bullets ricocheting off steel walls and sparks flying from the terminal. Clara, agile and quick, moved in an instant, disarming one of the soldiers and using his weapon against the others. Luis fired a few more rounds, taking down another soldier, while Kara ducked behind the console, attempting to finish her work. Aiden's mind was focused. The odds were against them, Hayes had brought backup, and they were severely outnumbered. But Aiden wasn't afraid. They had come too far to stop now. He moved toward the center of the room, keeping low to avoid the crossfire. "Clara, get to Kara!" Aiden shouted, his voice rising above the noise. Clara nodded and darted across the room, taking out another soldier in her path. Her focus was laser-sharp, determined. She reached Kara, who was still frantically typing at the console, trying to initiate the shutdown. "Just a few more seconds." Kara shouted over the chaos. Hayes, realizing the situation was slipping from his grasp, shouted orders to his men. "Move them out of the way. We can't let them finish the process." Aiden's heart pounded in his chest. He had one last chance, one final move to ensure the future was saved. In the midst of the gunfire and chaos, Aiden sprinted toward the main console. His mind raced as his fingers flew across the holographic keyboard in a desperate attempt to help Kara finish the process. "Kara, now!" Aiden yelled. Kara hit the final command just as a soldier lunged for her. The terminal whined, and a bright flash of blue light filled the room. The countdown reached 0. The mainframe powering OmniView flickered, then collapsed. The room fell silent. The soldiers stopped in their tracks. The very heartbeat of the surveillance grid had been severed. Hayes's expression shifted from arrogance to fear as the realization dawned on him. You've done it." Aiden stood tall, the adrenaline fading, leaving only clarity. "Yes, we did." Kara, Clara, and Luis regrouped quickly, weapons still drawn as the security systems powered down. The fight was not over yet. Hayes and his men were still a threat, but their victory here, at the core of it all, had shifted the balance. They had won the battle for now. They didn't waste time in the foundry after that. With OmniView destroyed, their next move was clear: they needed to get out and ensure their safety before Hayes had a chance to regroup. Aiden could feel the weight of their victory, but it was tempered by the reality that they still weren't free. There were far-reaching consequences to their actions. "We need to go," Clara urged, motioning for everyone to follow. "Now." A firefight erupted, loud and chaotic, with bullets ricocheting off steel walls and sparks flying from the terminal. Clara, agile and quick, moved in an instant, disarming one of the soldiers and using his weapon against the others. Luis fired a few more rounds, taking down another soldier, while Kara ducked behind the console, attempting to finish her work. Aiden's mind was focused. The odds were against them, Hayes had brought backup, and they were severely outnumbered. But Aiden wasn't afraid. They had come too far to stop now. He moved toward the center of the room, keeping low to avoid the crossfire. "Clara, get to Kara!" Aiden shouted, his voice rising above the noise. Clara nodded and darted across the room, taking out another soldier in her path. Her focus was laser-sharp, determined. She reached Kara, who was still frantically typing at the console, trying to initiate the shutdown. "Just a few more seconds." Kara shouted over the chaos. Hayes, realizing the situation was slipping from his grasp, shouted orders to his men. "Move them out of the way. We can't let them finish the process." Aiden's heart pounded in his chest. He had one last chance, one final move to ensure the future was saved. In the midst of the gunfire and chaos, Aiden sprinted toward the main console. His mind raced as his fingers flew across the holographic keyboard in a desperate attempt to help Kara finish the process. "Kara, now!" Aiden yelled. Kara hit the final command just as a soldier lunged for her. The terminal whined, and a bright flash of blue light filled the room. The countdown reached 0. The mainframe powering OmniView flickered, then collapsed. The room fell silent. The soldiers stopped in their tracks. The very heartbeat of the surveillance grid had been severed. Hayes's expression shifted from arrogance to fear as the realization dawned on him. You've done it." Aiden stood tall, the adrenaline fading, leaving only clarity. Yes, we did. Kara, Clara, and Luis regrouped quickly, weapons still drawn as the security systems powered down. The fight was not over yet. Hayes and his men were still a threat, but their victory here, at the core of it all, had shifted the balance. They had won the battle for now. They didn't waste time in the foundry after that. With OmniView destroyed, their next move was clear: they needed to get out and ensure their safety before Hayes had a chance to regroup. Aiden could feel the weight of their victory, but it was tempered by the reality that they still weren't free. There were far-reaching consequences to their actions. "We need to go," Clara urged, motioning for everyone to follow. Now. The team made their way out of the facility, retracing their steps through the tunnels, knowing that once they left, the battle would continue in the digital world. Aiden knew their fight wasn't over. The damage had been done, but the ripple effects of exposing OmniView would be felt worldwide. They had exposed the system, but there would be more to rebuild. As Aiden stepped into the cold night air of the Swiss Alps, a quiet sense of triumph washed over him. They had fought against a machine. A force that threatened the very fabric of freedom. But more importantly, they had shown that even in the face of overwhelming power, human resolve could prevail. And that, perhaps, was the greatest victory of all. The world outside was watching. They had planted the seeds of a new era. And Aiden Carter knew, without a doubt, that this was only the beginning. Weeks later, Aiden sat in a small cafe in Zurich, the weight of the world no longer crushing him. The world was watching the aftermath of the Phoenix signal, and the truth had spread like wildfire. Governments were scrambling to regain control, while a new wave of activists, hackers, and concerned citizens worked to rebuild what had been broken. OmniView was gone, but its shadows lingered. For every problem they solved, a new one arose. But Aiden and his team had shown the world that no system was invincible, not when people came together for the truth. As he sipped his coffee, Kara, Luis, and Clara joined him at the table. They were free, for now. But Aiden knew they couldn't rest. The future had just begun, and they were going to make sure it was a future worth fighting for. "We did it," Clara said softly, a small smile on her face. Aiden nodded, staring out the window, watching the world go by. "Yeah, but the hardest part's still ahead. Let's make sure it's a future we can all live in." And with that, the story of Aiden Carter, the 10-year-old genius who outshone Elon Musk, came to its close. But the revolution had only just begun. Hit subscribe and leave a comment with where you're watching from. This story might just spark a new beginning. What's one thing that always pushes you forward, even when things get tough?